24 year older. And time's like a story that's out of order now. In there, I just turned the page to you. Something like that.
Oh yeah.
It's because I'm 24 and 1 year older. Time's like a story that's out of order, and I just turn the page to you.
Beautiful. I started recording in the middle of that.
Wow.
I know. Sorry to do that, but it was so beautiful. And I thought might as well start.
I'm glad that it worked after deleting World of Warcraft and all the other things that are important.
Yes, from the laptop. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Playroom. This is actually the Playroom that I was in when I was a child, hence the Beanie Babies. And now it is the Playroom for us as adults. This is episode 4, and this is with my dear friend, brother, companion, thought partner, collaborator, everything, Matthew Frank. Matthew and I met at Stanford in our freshman year, and we were in the same fraternity, and eventually we ended up living together and living together physically and mentally, spiritually, emotionally in many ways. And for the past few years, we have been collaborating on this system that we call the Ancestor System, which this channel and the wiki and all that is dedicated to. And Matthew has been a huge part of that, a huge part of refining the intelligences, the archetypes. Some of it was actually even done in this room when he's come and visited me. So much has been done on the phone. So much has been done over text and in the spirit world as well. But just a real collaborator on all this and a big part of everything we're doing. So it's very glad to have you here. Matt is an artist, a musician. He's a thinker, a philosopher, a spiritual seeker. He's someone who very much lives in many worlds at once. I think when I think of you, Matt, I think of you as living very much in a world of magic and of higher things like the world of spirit, but also being so deeply rooted and grounded in this three-dimensional world here and now, and having so much love and care for the people you meet on the street, the people at the coffee shop, the birds that are chirping, the sun that shines. Um, you're very here and you're also very not here, and you exist in that kind of liminal space. And I love you very much. So here we are.
Well, thank you, Ari. That's more of an intro than I could have asked for. And it's such a pleasure to share this space with you, something that we've done so much since we've known each other, but it's really exciting to be part of this new really stage of your process, my process, our process together, and the progress of Ancestor to becoming something that really reaches out into the world. So I'm happy to be here with you as always, no matter where that is or what that is. But this is a particularly exciting one for me, and I know for you.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. So thank you.
Oh yeah. For those of you who are new here or are just joining us, what we're basically trying to do in simple terms is we had this awesome thing happen basically 50, 60 years ago, which is that we got globalized as a world, and all these perspectives from all these different cultures, all these different religions, all these different groups of people became put on the table. We now have the perspectives of women being taken seriously for the first time and the feminine wisdom being taken seriously for the first time. We have ecological, environmental wisdom being taken seriously. We have the wisdom of East and West commingling. We have spiritual traditions and science being put kind of into the same conversation. And really, every part of our being now has a seat at the table. The problem with that is that these different parts of our being, these different views that exist within us, these different perspectives, these different archetypes that we inhabit, these different stakeholders, all kind of have different intuitions and different perspectives that are non-reducible to each other, right? Science has wisdom about certain things, but it can't necessarily say what should be, right? It has wisdom about what is, but it can't say what should be, right? Religion might say here's what's ethical or what's moral, but it can't necessarily say exactly how the specifics of things always work. Um, Feminine wisdom is amazing at some things. Masculine wisdom is amazing at some things, right? Practical intelligence is needed. Emotional intelligence is needed. We have all these different parts of ourselves that all have something to offer the conversation. But right now in the culture, they're fighting and they don't harmonize. They're only taking their perspective to be true and denying all the other ones. And this is possible because of postmodernism, which recognizes that all these different perspectives are valid and need to be treated on their own terms. But this is causing a lot of problems because as we're dealing with things that affect all of us, right? The climate crisis, the loneliness epidemic, we're losing more people every year to suicide than we're losing people in war, in from hunger, from disease combined. We're losing 800,000 people a year just from suicide. And so you're more likely to kill yourself than be killed in crime or in a war or something like this on average. So we're having a meaning crisis. And so that's what we're trying to do here in these conversations, in this larger field, which is sometimes called the metamodern field or the integral field, is we're trying to create maps of all these perspectives that are important and hold space for these perspectives within ourselves so that we can play forward towards some holistic or integral sense of meaning that can unite us as a species, unite us as a people, so that we can coordinate to solve these big problems that we all face while recognizing all these different perspectives and all these different viewpoints that we need to include and not leave out while we do that. So that's a little overview.
Yeah, it is. It is all in one. And I'll just add
Yeah,
quickly,
please.
um, I think one of the beautiful things that me and you have talked about so much as a goal is to really look at what has become so contentious in culture, has become so divisive, and really recognize the beauty. And I say that generally, but that comes across in so many things. You talk about the last 60 years, the invention of so many technological, social norms and behaviors and fundamental infrastructure that can allow us to do really incredible things. I say that because this isn't we talk so much about, this isn't a looking backwards. This is very much a looking forwards, but an incorporation of things that have existed much longer than 60 years ago, and things that are only available to us now, and how to do it right. How to do it right is really the focus of your work and the work that I'm able to help you with, and the work and the work of many people who have come before us. The question really being centered around how do we do this right, and how do we sort of navigate a few of the pitfalls that are at times seem so entrenched in the culture, but are really just part of the bumps along the road towards where we pray and hope and believe ourselves to be going.
Yeah, it's really well said. I think, yeah, there's a temptation, I think, to regress or to go back to mindsets that are less complex and feel like, oh, that's when we knew, what worked, so let's stick with that. It's similar in our own lives, right? The micro and the macro are symmetric, and sometimes we often in the system talk about it as the seasons and going from, summer into fall and
Sure.
the desire to go back into summer when everything kind of made sense. And then we could talk more about that in detail later. But you see this happen on a global scale too, like the rise of someone like Andrew Tate or people who are very strong, um, people who are breathing life again into these older values uh, that worked 10,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, that made sense in those contexts. And it's like, oh man, there's too much complexity. There's too many of these different perspectives, too many different definitions of what it means to be a man. Let's go back to that version that worked back in the day that a lot of us can find solace in. The problem with it is it denies or it leaves out entirely so many of the new realizations we've had since. And so the question is, how do we not just resist postmodernity and resist this multi-perspective world, but how do we integrate these different perspectives into a map that goes beyond it, recognizing that there's value in these kind of mythic traditional structures that we've had in the past, that we actually need some of that to know
Right.
what's going on around us and have some sort of a floor to our psyches, right? That we need kind of some of these modern mindsets, these entrepreneurial mindsets, achievement-oriented mindsets,
Sure.
technological mindsets, that we need these postmodern mindsets, recognizing the constructed nature of language and how social dynamics are often constructed, and there are power dynamics that we should be aware of, and who's being centered, who's being left out. These things are very important. And
Yeah.
how do we move beyond these into an integral perspective that harmonizes them? So yeah, that's the project
Yes.
uh, that we're engaging in here. Do you think in the past I thought, would it be interesting if we kind of just named the perspectives that we're holding right now, like the intelligences we feel that we're strong in and the archetypes we feel that we're strong in, just to give a
Sure.
little, just show where we're coming from transparently.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful place to start.
Would you like to start or?
Sure. No, I'll do it. Whew,
Mm-hmm.
um, where am I at now? It seems like that's a question that I'm always really searching for the answer to, but I very often feel ground in my own life, my own center has always been around the heart, has always been around the heart. Those that know me, will probably laugh and say, "Yeah," but that's my radiating source. It's where, of course, I feel like incredibly intelligent. It's where I feel like I have a high amount of natural gift for, but it's also my home. It's the place where I like to hang out. Is in love and empathy and friendship and family. It is my favorite pair of sunglasses. It is the best weather. It is my favorite place to be is in the heart and in love. Um, and that's been such a special thing for me in my life because we talk about love a lot and we learn about love a lot, but I really feel like so much of the way that I've viewed important things in my life have been through love, have been through relationships. So that's sort of like my disclaimer as my ground floor. But I've
Mhm.
been really working on recently in developing more of my expressional capabilities, really like centering as much as I can more now in the throat, in my voice, in the stuff that I have to say, which I think, when I look back on the conversations that me and you have had in the last 6 months or so, so much of that for me personally has been, where do I feel fear saying the things that I believe? Where do I become too self-critical or too perfectionist? Um, or where's sort of my purest vocalization, my purest thought, and how do I sort of put that out into the world? It's something that I think about a lot as like a goal, or as a place where I would love to see myself in a year or 2 years being more exceptional or adequate or developed at, is really centered around the throat, expression. And I'll just end this sort of idea of like, the intelligences with, I think, corresponding to the levels of development that I've worked on as well. As always, I find myself gravitating towards my lower intelligences, my feet in the ground, my body, my aesthetic capabilities and abilities, and me, Matthew, the ego, the thing that I put out into the world every day, that I reflect on the most, that has the most sort of easy gravity in the world that we live in today. So that's sort of me in a intelligence nutshell. Um, and I'll just say quickly on the types. I very much resound and resemble and embody the South, this place of motherly love, this place of the earth, this place of belonging and being, going down, down, down. into the real roots of me here now in this third dimension, of the me that has held all of these experiences over my life. That's where I hang out the most. And it comes with a little bit of a dark flavor, which um, as difficult as it is for me to say, I like it when the going gets tough, and that's always been something that I've sought out in my life. It's where my growth has always been found. Um, yeah.
Hell yeah. Should I actually bring the
Do you
wheel?
want to? Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to add a little bit of context around what I'm
Yeah,
sort of saying about the South and the intelligences and
I will bring it over.
the lingo that we use? But I think um, it's worth bringing to light
Let's see if this
on hand.
is it flipped backwards.
No, it's perfect.
This doesn't read backwards.
No, it says the lover.
Okay, it's just flip for me. Hello, everyone. Um, a quick note on this. So in integral theory proper, they reference the types. So they talk about quadrants, levels, lines, states, and types. So um, they hold space for all of these ideas, but the type system in integral proper isn't really developed. So this is something that Matt and I, and a big part of my work has been on the type specifically, and taking inspiration from the Enneagram, taking inspiration from Myers-Briggs, taking inspiration from astrology and other famous type systems. But one of the things that we've noticed in our work is that it seems like styles are different from intelligences. So someone can embody the attitude of a king using the emotional intelligence, or embody the attitude of a king using the practical intelligence. But the king is just a way, it's just a style, it's just a flavor that can be brought to any intelligence. And one of the things that we see in a lot of other type systems, namely the Enneagram, is a type is associated with an intelligence. And these are kind of combined. And I think that's fine if you want a really broad overview, but if you want a more nuanced understanding of personality, I think it helps to separate out sensitivities, which are intelligences, and styles of relating to those sensitivities. Like there are artists, for example, our good friend Luca, he is an artist. He has an amazing aesthetic intelligence, but he also can come at it with the attitude of the sage, right? Where he's tweaking tiny sine wave values in Ableton and doing very complex sage-like technical craftsman things to the aesthetic intelligence, right? That's something, if you just call him the artist, you may miss, because maybe in some senses the artist is associated with just letting the creativity flow and not being too organized. That's fine, but we can actually get a deeper understanding of these archetypes if we separate out intelligences and types. So this is a map of the types. And what we've done here is made it symmetric with the seasons that appear in the year and with the months of the year. So right now we're in June's month, which is the month of the innocent. We just come out of the month of the fool, which is May. And trying to make it intuitive in the body as well as in nature, and just make it have a lot of associations. So what Matt was getting at by saying that he's associated or he's centered often in the South is the North, you could think of it being as the head or kind of the thinking center. The North is interested in doing, in planning and outcomes in the past and the future. And we call this the father direction. This is the masculine energy, which is the energy of doing. The South is the energy of being or feeling. And this is kind of more associated with the body, right? Like deep down in us. And this is more kind of planning from above. The North is associated with winter. It's harsh, it's difficult, and it requires kind of steadfastness in the face of that. The South is summer. It's warm, it's enjoyable. You can just rest and be, and you don't have to think as much about it. The East is associated with the energy of the light and the right-hand side of us, and the West is associated with the left-hand side of us and the darkness. And so in some traditional type systems or masculine feminine systems, masculine and light are associated and feminine and dark are associated. Here, we've put them on separate axes. So you can have light feminine, light masculine, dark masculine. And the idea that there are two sides of each of these energies. So the great mother would include the light feminine, and the dark feminine. And the great father would include the light masculine or the light masculine and the dark masculine. And we can go deeper into this if desired, but Matt is basically saying he feels a deeper connection to a sense of being over a sense of doing, and that being or that feeling often takes a little bit of a darker tinge, as opposed to darker meaning a little bit more serious, a little bit more intense, a little bit more mysterious, confusing, unconventional, as opposed to more of a light bend, which would be more playful, more comic, more lighthearted, more jovial.
Hmm.
And
I think, Ari, it would be really helpful, just to the viewers quickly, to give sort of a social example of a dark mother character, a light mother character, a light father character, and a dark father character, just very briefly, so people
great.
can sort of a pop culture idea around these types.
Sure. So if north means doing, right? South means being or feeling. West means dark and or intense, serious, scary, fearful, and east means light, so happy, lighthearted, comic. So you could imagine this quadrant is feeling dark, right? This quadrant is doing dark, this
Mm,
quadrant doing light, and this quadrant is feeling light. Another way you can call it is mama can sometimes be associated with pleasure, and papa can sometimes be associated with pain. And so there's light pleasure, there's dark pain, and there's light pain. So some examples from culture. The dark father is pretty prevalent in our culture. The dark father is someone who is trying to get shit done, focus on outcomes, push themselves to work hard, push themselves to change things, work hard on things, go into difficult things and do it with gusto. So someone like David Goggins is someone who embodies the spirit of the warrior very well. He's gotten a lot of popularity recently because of his unrelenting drive to just finish the mission, right? And he doesn't care what it feels like. He doesn't care
mm,
how much it hurts. He's focused on the mission, on the goal, and that's what he's attacking. Another person is like Jocko Willink, has that energy. Joe Rogan has some of that energy. Even someone like a Jordan Peterson or some of these Andrew Tate, is trying to embody maybe a little bit more of the king, but also, the warrior, but saying, a man's job is to get things done and do these things. These are kind of dark father types. They usually like, black and white profile photos of furrowed brows and these sorts of things and showing how hard it is and showing how much sweat they poured into this thing and the Strava numbers and,
yeah,
they're satisfied by torn ligaments and these sorts of things because it show, the scars on the armor show how intense the battle was, and that's what
right, right.
fathers want to say. The outlaw also is some of that. The outlaw is more interested in tearing things down, destroying things to change them, and we see a lot of the outlaw in like activism today, and the intensity of that, but also in like biker gangs and rebels of all kinds and stripes and these sorts of people.
A quick question, just sticking here, but I want to keep moving around this wheel. The natural, my ear naturally hearing these archetypical characters in our society think, are these people that are naturally apathetic? Are these people that are naturally sort of all for me? Are these people that are motivators first? Or is there some idea of this being an actually like deeply inherently social role that provides some sense of balance against both a lighter sort of side and a more motherly side, and even like sort of the well-rounding idea of the father itself? Just briefly because
Yeah.
this is I think this is a particularly a relevant role that we see so much, and many people I think that we know who look for role models, especially young males, sort of gravitate towards these characters. Now, I just want to flesh out a little bit why.
That's a great point. Yeah, one thing to note is that the archetypes have different, you could say, levels of development inherent in them as well. So every archetype has a shadow aspect or has unhealthy manifestations of it, as well as kind of more divine or
Sure.
exalted, healthy versions of it. So,
Yeah.
in general, every archetype at the lower levels is more egocentric, is more self-serving. And as it goes up the levels of development, it learns more how to integrate with a community, with other people, and play a larger role for the world while also recognizing its own needs at the same time and integrating those two. You kind of go from all about me, then all about the group, then you learn kind of to integrate the two as the level
Right.
gets higher, and maybe to maybe serve something even higher than human beings eventually. Um, but without the Dark Father, right? Dark Father, you can just that just means doing hard things, right? Like that
Hmm.
just doing difficult, nasty,
Yeah.
hard things.
Yeah.
We need people to do that, right? In our own lives, if we have a disconnection from the Dark Father, it actually causes more problems, right? You see some people who are so excited all the time about being in the light and never going into the darkness, never facing things head on. Sometimes this means people don't want to work out, means sometimes they don't want to have hard conversations. They don't want to clean up. They don't want to do the hard work of destroying bad habits. The outlaw is the one who can look at your life up until this point and say, "Fuck it, I'll throw that in the bin and I'll have a new life. I'll create something new right now. I'll put my whole life on fire and I'll move away from that." Um,
Mm.
the outlaw is willing to destroy things and clear way for new growth. The warrior is ready to go into the coldest night, the hottest fire, and just head first do what needs to be done, right? All of us in our own lives need to have access to the Dark Father to be able to make shit happen that doesn't really have the flywheel behind it yet, right? The Dark Father is, we talk about the first one who is stepping into conscious competence. He's the wintertime energy of pushing through the hard stuff. And we all need access to that. And as a society, we need people to protect us, right? Not everyone on earth has our best interest in mind, doesn't want us to live sometimes. Sometimes you need someone who's willing to pick up the sword and do what's right and what's
Yeah.
necessary. We need policemen, we need soldiers,
Yeah.
we need people to keep the peace and keep the order, and those people have to be willing to do dark things to protect what's light.
Mm.
So in an integrated society, the Dark Father is married and um, in relationship with the light, right? But you can have when you have fragmentation or disintegration, you have the Dark Fathers running their own little kingdom and oppressing the light or seeing the light as weak or being able to take advantage of them, as opposed to saying, no, this is what we're fighting for, this is what we're protecting.
Yeah.
um, a quick
I
note.
think that, no, I think I would just interrupt to say I think that answers the question for the dark father for now. It's worth just to fill out the rest of the type
Right.
reel while we can sort of create the balanced picture of where the other archetypes are, because it's such an interesting one. I know me and you spend a lot of time talking about the most. It's particularly, like I said, it's something that has a lot of appeal in this culture right now and a lot of gravity, but we should return to it where we can give it more depth.
Yes. Yeah, a tiny note on that before we move forward is, he was really uh, strong within us during the modernist period and previous periods of human history. So during the medieval period, the Dark Father's like the man, the knights who are chopping heads off and shit. We love the Dark Father. During modernity, the people who are willing to work hard and build the stuff and da 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 da, the industrial man, if you think about those Art Deco murals in New York of like these jacked guys like making these buildings, or in communist Russia, these super jacked guys like building a nation with their hands. Like that's so Dark Father.
Yeah.
But after the post-war period, and with the rise of postmodernity, this like kind of dark masculine energy was really questioned because we saw all the horror that it brought on the world when left
Yeah.
completely unchecked. And there's been a big shift towards light mama, and we'll talk about that. And some media today, like The Last of Us or God of War, the new God of Wars, and a variety of other movies and media are about basically the old grizzled dark father learning how to take care of and love an innocent, playful child, basically,
Mm.
and learning how to open his heart, and the child learning how to grow up. And I
Yeah.
think this is a reflection in culture of us as a culture having to reckon with our kind of grizzled, old, dark masculine past, and maybe some of these newer, lighter energies that are emerging.
Yeah.
The light father has been an aspirational archetype for a lot of human history through Jesus. The light
Mm.
father is the one who takes on light pain, right? This is the doctor, the caregiver, the one who puts the burden of the society and others on their back, not to go on some crusade or some war, but to right here, right now, to help out. So that's, the king, the light aspect of the king is watching over the kingdom and taking care of people, right? The giving host is like a king, right? There's also the dark king, which is like the judge, right? The
Mm.
lawmaker, the lawgiver. Um, and the light father is about doing light. So holding space for people, showing up for people, listening to people, trying to help people solve problems. The sage is trying to discover things, and in an ideal way for the benefit of all, to illuminate others. In
Mm.
stories, we often encounter the sage as the mentor or the wise old man, Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, the
Yeah.
person who helps the hero on their quest and says, "Hey, maybe you should think of this." Whoa. Um, the sage, the mentor, the guide, this is someone who is taking responsibility for another person and helping shepherd them, right? The caregiver is helping heal them. Sometimes the doctor has to cut, right? Sometimes the doctor has to do a surgery that may hurt, but they're willing to do that because they know it's going to help the organism. The caregiver can also be called the parent. One of the confusing things in the system is you could call the caregiver also the mother or the father, but we use those words differently. But the caregiver is someone who's taking responsibility for someone else, and providing for them. The
Yeah.
sage is someone who's guiding someone else and
Yeah.
giving them wisdom, and who's seeking wisdom, who's a teacher and who's a student as well. That's kind of where that archetype is. And we have a good amount of access to this in the culture. Doctors are really well respected in our culture. We have a lot of respect for science and for people doing these sorts of things that are helping us live better lives. And we have a lot of respect for the sage, as seen in, academia and in the value we place on learning and education. There's a lot of respect for it. It's good to be the sage. It's good to know things and understand things.
I think no, I think to briefly interrupt on this point in particular, a lot of what I think to be like the core democratic ideals are really rooted in like light fatherism.
That's right.
Not surprisingly, because so many of them are rooted in the Christian doctrine and are rooted in Christian law and the idea of human rights and the idea of so many things that are in really fundamental light father religions that we could talk about in a separate point. But I think, the democratic ideals, even the idea of like the White House and the white Capitol building and this white cobblestone and these monuments is the elected governance is the idea that there is the caregiver, there's someone looking out for you. There's someone doing the hard work for the benefit of all. And if we really, put our energy behind this one person who's doing, separate work from the Dark Father, who we talk about as these warrior outcast types or outlaw types. The caregiver is like the democratically elected leader with the suit and tie. And I think it's something that we see a lot in our culture, and don't always talk the most about aspirationally, which I think
Right.
is interesting to sort of put a little bit of an asterisk on if we want to return to it at some
Yeah.
point.
It's something that we take kind of for granted because our society is like pretty hype on the light father naturally. And so we don't really notice it as an archetype because we swim in it. Like the ideal policeman is a caregiver, not a warrior, right?
Right,
Police
right.
helping the cat out of the tree or whatever it is, it's not like shooting a bunch of people. Um,
Yeah,
Maybe it goes into a darker aspect if things take that darker turn, but ideally the policeman is the one keeping the peace, keeping the order, making you feel safe. And that's really the energy, when I've had powerful experiences with the light father archetypically, this energy, I think the energy that Jesus can give us is this idea that someone figured it out, right? Like that's kind of the idea with the sage. You go to school and you're like, whoa, there's someone smarter than me who like has answers. They've like spent hundreds of years refining these, ideas, and someone spent their whole lifetime learning it to teach it to me. Wow, there's someone
mm,
knows something, or someone, is smart enough at medicine to help fix me. Like, doctor, what do I do? It's like, I got you, kid. Like, I'll fix you right up. And that's, I think, what Jesus offered us, right? Is you go and it's this guy came and he died for your sins and things are good. You just have to let him
mm,
into your heart. And if you let
right,
him in, you're saved
right.
forever. And it's a very comforting idea. This idea and this feeling of mercy, of grace, right? That the universe does take care of you, will take care of you, is on your side. Um, and it's a little more somber than the light mother, who's a lot more playful and jovial and kind of erratic. The light father is like a beautiful Zen garden. That's the light father, somewhere where
Right.
you go when you feel
Right.
like.
There's a benefit to the discipline. There's a peaceful reward, a bright reward, a light reward to this discipline. The Zen garden takes something of an incredible amount of practice and precision, but the reward is one that's really, yeah, it's a sage. It's somebody who's able to put down the hard work but one that really is about like about an encompassing energy and an involving, inviting energy. It's interesting archetype. So
Yeah.
yeah,
The light mother, and you can see that these are associated with the seasons, and we could go into that more at a later date. But the light father is correlated with the emergence of the light after the dark winter. So the dark father kind of gets you through the harrowing time of the winter, and the sage, after the spring equinox, kind of is the illumination of insight, of thought, and the light returning. And the light father kind of shepherds you through the end of the darkness and into the light. And then
mm,
spring starts to come, and things start to get hotter and lighter. You start getting into the energy of the light mother. And the light mother, the quickest way to give you a bead on the light mother is the inner child. The light mother is, Tinkerbell, Peter Pan, right? The one who never wants to grow up, who is 20 or who's 50 years old and eating Fruit Loops cereal. The light mother doesn't take things too seriously. She smells the roses. She's okay with exploring. She doesn't need there to be an outcome or a plan. She wants to get in touch with and deeply feel the beauty and the joy and the whimsy and the play that's existing right here and now, right?
yeah,
The light father is thinking, well, let me set up everything perfectly so then, right? And the dark father is saying, let me fight this hard battle so then, right? Light mama is saying, let me feel this here and now because
mm,
it's happening right now.
mm,
Um, and so the archetypes she rules over are the Fool, an archetype we talk about a lot on the Playroom, and really the archetype the Playroom is named after. The Playroom is really named after the Light Mother,
yeah.
and this idea that she's holding space for us to play and to not know and to kind of be fools and to play forward. And the idea is that because the things have gotten so complex that if we just try to do it with the warrior or with the king and make everything sit perfectly and do this like an academic paper, it's not going to work this time because we're dealing with stuff that's so new and so complex that we need to go into it with a spirit of innocence and play and earnestness and see what happens. So, the light mother is the one who says, it's okay to stay up a few more hours and play around. It's okay to wear a funny outfit that looks goofy. It's okay to have your hair be messy. Like everything doesn't need to be perfect and fit in place. When things grow and when they bloom, it's this abundant process, and abundance, true abundance is messy, right? It's not like a bonsai tree where you're clipping it as it's coming out perfectly. The light mama says, you're a human being, you're in a body, you're still, there's a little kid inside that still has its own desires. Let it explore, let it seek, be
I
innocent.
wanna I want to jump in quickly to add, interestingly, in parallel in some ways to the Dark Father. I think the first question that comes to mind is like all of this innocence, all of this play. Is it inherently selfish? Is the light mother somebody who is like the rules don't apply to me, or is the light mother somebody who says you can be just the way they are, but maybe isn't playing by the rules of the same game? And what does an integrated light mother look like, in the same way that the dark father can sort of um, be this really isolated role, in a completely different way, very much a reflection. The light mother, I think, also has this potential to be somebody who seems so separated from reality. What is sort of like the archetypical ground that this light mother can stand on, and how do we sort of see it as an integral, a role that can be part of the system?
That was dope, dude. That was dope. That's exactly the point, right? Um, the reason we made this a map is because they're usually not on a map. You go to
Mm,
Disneyland and it's Light Mama Land, right? If
mhm,
Disneyland had it its way, you would never leave and you would, you would play forever. There's not a lot of space held at Disneyland for like the real world. You just enter the fantasy land and that's all it is. You never have to grow up. And some people, Disney's their whole personality. They only watch, it's like maybe there's some other things in life that need to get done. Some
mhm.
people live in the gym mindset 24/7 and they look down on animated movies and they look down on any sort of play and fun. And that's corrosive in its own way. So by putting them on a map and showing their relationships to each other, we can remind ourselves when we need a little bit of medicine from the opposite or when it's time to tap into what. And the light mother, the caregiver is sometimes thought of as the healer, but the light mother really does have a healing quality in the sense that, life is hard and we might try as much as we want as to be a warrior or to be a king or to be a ruler and to hold things down and to make things go our way. But there is
Yeah.
an inherent amount of, kind of randomness and craziness with the universe. And the light mother reminds us that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay for things not to go our way. It's okay to put all our effort into something and maybe what we expected doesn't happen, but maybe there's a gift hidden there. And only if we could be foolish enough and playful enough to be open to something that we didn't want to happen with the warrior, right? Because the warrior has a mission, has a goal. He's thinking about, well, I need to finish this thing so that this thing happens. Light mama is a bit of an antidote to that and saying, well, what else happened? Okay, maybe the
Right.
thing you wanted didn't
Maybe
happen.
we have to laugh about it. Maybe we have to laugh about it, right? The warrior who puts his head down and says, we just have to go through it. At some point, maybe it does require tactically an element of light mother to say, this is something that just has to be laughed about and let go. And again, I think it's really important that you make the point about balance, because at the end of the day, looking at this map, even you think, oh, do I exist sort of at the very edge of this? I exist around the periphery. I think there's something really beautiful about saying, how can we inch ourselves closer and closer to the center, where we're incorporating multiple different of these personalities at once. And I think there's, one of the most beautiful examples of that is it just sort of naturally comes out of the system that you've written on the board here is this dark father to light mother relationship, which is one that, culturally, I think is like a tale as old as time, a story that seems to be in every genre. It's the idea of the relationship between the two. So
Mhm.
just to add that point.
Such a good point. Such a good point. These are tactical for each other. I mean, to play really hard and really well, you need to set up, you need to go to the store and get the party cups and set up, make sure people know where the bathroom is, or else the party can't go for that long because you're
Yeah.
up against practical constraints. So the warrior helps support play, right? Think about all the engineers that made Disneyland. Like think about all the guys with the fathers, right? All the little kings in the back of a concert with the headset saying, we need more sound on speaker 6. And, these are all little sages, little technicians making sure the sound is perfect, right?
Yeah.
Um, the guys who made the Sennheiser microphones and stuff are these little engineers, but it allows for this beautiful music to be shared. So we need each other, absolutely. Um, as we go into the South, we get into the lover, and this is maybe Matt's medicine. So maybe I'll let you explain the lover, and I can pick it back up for Dark Mama, or you can go in, whatever.
Sure. I'll give just the briefest stop along the way as we sort of come back full circle to where we began, which is this home base for me. Um, I think there's something really beautiful about this idea of ultimate presence, something that's really incredibly enticing to me, something I strive for. Let's take the practice of meditation as sort of like a little mini container, right? Like meditation as a practice depends on where you're learning it from, how you're doing it, what type of techniques you're using. But let's say you're taking like a Vipassana meditation course, right? So much of the instruction a word I can't say, about Vipassana meditation comes from like a father root. Like it is this diligent practice. There's certain steps. There's the tenfold path. There's line after line. But where are we going? And I think the idea is that you build this sort of father container, but what's inside is really this like pure blissful connection from really like head to toe. And when I sit in that meditation, the idea of the lover is like my groundedness feels really, really deeply intertwined with the earth around me, with my connection to my friends. I feel very deeply the emotions of others. I feel very connected to the social sense around me, the social atmosphere around me, the social weather around me. And I think that that's something that we talk a lot about, me and you, as in many ways a blessing as a curse, a blessing and a curse. And this is the lover's story. This is the lover's story in media. It's the lover's story in So many of our own personal romantic experiences and general romantic experiences. But it's a place at the end of the day that looks at pain and beauty and happiness and sadness and really just tries to be present with it all, cries out the tears and smiles the biggest smile. That's the lover, that's the South. That's the idea of ultimate be.
So well said. From the horse's mouth. From the horse's mouth. I couldn't go by the lover and not knock on your door. Um,
I appreciate it. I'm standing here, so.
yeah. I mean, you're to, you know, if you know me, which if you're watching this, you probably do, and if you don't, hello. Um, each one of the archetypes, I think someone in my own life really animated that archetype for me and helped me understand the ins and outs of that archetype, especially the subtypes. The big types are kind of these archetypical patterns that you can really feel in the world, and in yourself. Of course, all of these exist within you and outside of you. But for me, I think, Matt, I just want to, name it that you really are the archetype of the lover to me, or the way in which the lover has spoken to me. And where I've been able to access a lot of the medicine of the lover is by watching you and being with you and relating to you and feeling your love and the way you treat me and take care of me and love me in all my quirks and weirdness. You've really given me that lover energy, that South, that the mother. Today, a lot of people are overworked, a lot of people are busy, but the Mother Earth, that's what I mean by mother, the one who is just radiant and grounded and fluid and doesn't need things to go a certain way and doesn't care about time and just says, I'll sit with you as long as it takes. If you want to cry out the tears, I'll cry them with you. If you want to sing a happy song, I'll bring my guitar. Whatever this river goes, I'm gonna flow with it. And I had a dream one time, or actually a very powerful vision, and I've had a vision. I mean, you see a lot of wolves around, my space. I love the archetype of the wolf. And um I had this dream of feeling like I needed to go to the top of a cliff and just howl at the moon. And I remember I went and I did that, and there was a voice in my head saying, "Why are you out here howling? No one's gonna howl with you. You're doing something crazy." And I remember looking to my side, and before I even started howling, you were howling with me,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And I looked
yeah,
at you, and you didn't even look back at me because you were so deep in this howl.
yeah.
But you were like, "Oh, we're howling," like, "Oh." You weren't even thinking about it.
Listen, I think to add one more point about the lover, the thing that and this because it's the playroom, um, the lover we love the lover as an archetype. We love the lover as an archetype. It's like you open up Netflix and you look at the recommendations, and like every story is a love story. There's different
Yeah,
flavors of the love story, but every story is a love story. Um,
that's right.
uh, that's like the prevailing story. It's the prevailing myth. Unfortunately, I think that more often than not, love gets tainted because we've talked about it so much, because we really shape shift it to fit into a bunch of different places in the archetype wheel. We shift it to different, we shape shift it into a bunch of different intelligences or to people at different levels, that we sort of have this really convoluted idea of what the lover can be. The lover can be an incredibly like fatherly, strict character lover. The fatherly can be like the David Goggins saying, "I love the pain," right? And I just want to, as the representative, as the ambassador, I just want
Yeah,
to say that
that's right.
it's easy to throw the word love. What we're really talking about is like the intense, pure appreciation for what might be a really peak experience in the archetype wheel, what might be a really peak intelligence experience. We can sort of stop ourselves. Oh my God, like I'm in love with this moment. We talk so much about like the light as somehow being love, dumbfoundedly in love, like blissfully in love. Um, I think one of the most beautiful things about the love being the South is it really straddles this line between light and dark. And I think one thing that I've really began to embrace and continue to embrace in my life is self-love and integral love. And that comes through balance between light and dark. And it doesn't just peak in pain. It doesn't just peak in romance. It doesn't just peak in caregiving. It really finds its home in this like ultimate, warm, slowly south, southerly place.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's whenever we make these systems and use these words, you know, the word love can just mean relationship with, right? Like when David Goggins is saying, like, I love the pain, right? It means like when I feel this feeling, I allow it and I'm excited to feel it arising, right?
Yeah.
That's one way to say it. When we're talking about the lover, and words are so clumsy, but when we're talking about lover in the context of archetype wheel, I think we really touched beautifully on the point that, like, imagine it doesn't have a name. You know, imagine this thing doesn't have a name. Let's not even call it the lover. This place in the psyche. This is a place, this is a map of the psyche, a map of the mind, a map of the feeling system, or the being system. This is just the part of us that is obsessed with everything that is arising just as it is.
Just
David,
as it is.
David Goggins loves the pain more than he loves pleasure. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what we're talking about when we're talking about the lover. Every archetype is defined by what it loves. The king loves order. The warrior loves accomplishment or fit doing things. The outlaw loves the destruction of old things and the way of the new. The lover loves things. The lover loves
Just as they are.
everything.
Just
Just
as.
as it is. Oh, it's a bonsai tree. That's nice that it's so manicured. Oh, it's a junkyard and it looks like shit. That's really nice too. Oh, this bar has two people in it and it looks horrible. Perfect. Oh, this bar is bustling and it seems like all the shishi people are here. Great. The lover doesn't care. The lover
Mm,
just sees what is beautiful about what's arising, just like a
mm,
mother, right?
mm.
It's just because the fact that it's here, just because of the fact that it's mine and that I'm in relationship with it, it's perfect. It being it is enough. And that's what we mean when we talk about the lover and the South.
Bravo. Let's continue.
Let's continue.
Wonderfully said.
Now we're entering home territory for yours truly. Um, the Dark Mother, the Dark Mother is the end of fall, sorry, the end of summer as we start to move into fall. So the fall equinox happens right here, and this is when it starts to get dark, starts to get nights get longer, get colder. You know, in the cycle of the day, this is when the sun sets. And the animals kind of that last beautiful warm moment of the sun setting. Um, the Dark Mother is she's the queen of the underworld. Um, she's the queen of the subconscious. She's the queen of the animals and the animal within, right? If the Light Mother is the queen of the inner child, the inner animal, sorry, the Light Mother is the queen of that that hopeful, joyful, playful, innocent part of ourselves inside, that kind of that young and cute, kawaii part of ourselves. The Dark Mother, she is the mother of the part of ourselves that is nasty and smelly and gross and sweaty. The part that doesn't like cry in like a cute way or even in like a lover way. She rules over that side of it, but she's fine if we're screaming at the top of our lungs, if we're vomiting, if we're sick and we're shaking, if we're
Mm,
losing our minds. She holds space for all of that.
mm,
Dark Mama says it's okay to feel whatever we're feeling, and it's okay to feel the things that are dark, right? Dark Papa says it's okay to do the things that are dark. It's okay to do the things that are hard. Oh, it hurts? That's fine. We love things that hurt, right? Oh, it's hairy in there. It's gross in there. There's gunfire happening. Great. I'm gonna run in there and do what needs to be done, right? The building's on fire. Seems like a good day to be a fireman. I'm going in there, right? That's the
mm,
Dark Father. Dark Mother, she doesn't she doesn't care about doing, she cares about dropping in and feeling and being. So for her, the craziest, wildest desires, those are on the table. For
yeah.
her, darkest, most twisted emotions, those are on the table. She's the one who holds space for our grief, our pain, our fear, all of these things that arise in us that are intense, that are scary, that are uncomfortable. She thinks these things are the most delicious things in the world.
Yeah.
Um, she reminds us that this is what makes us human and makes us alive, is that we care, we feel deeply, we lose, you know, and you know, she sees those emotions in some sense as being the most beautiful and the most real. So she is feeling dark, and you can encounter her very recently in culture has she gotten some sort of a seat at the table. Only in postmodernity has she really been able to enter the conversation again, because in history, the Christian axis is this axis. It's light father is the divine archetype. God is made in the image of the light father, and everything that is dark and bodily is hell, is sin, is Satan, right?
Mm.
So most traditional religions highly prioritize the light father and the father side in general, and certainly the light. So they prioritize things that are happy and good and positive because the world was dark and scary and there's animals trying to eat you. So they're prioritizing the good things, right? The happy things. And life is chaotic and messy and all over the place. And so they're trying to prioritize order and structure and things going well. So for the majority of history, Dark Mama went by many names, the deceiver, the temptress, the succubus, the Satan, the devil, right? This idea of something that will seduce you away from the light, that will take you away from that which is perfect and orderly in the garden, right? She's the snake, but she's also the one that grants knowledge. She's also
Yeah.
the one that grants real earthiness and connection to the world, not just in this perfect, idyllic garden. Um, and
I was gonna, because we've carved out this idea of the type wheel.
right.
Um, I want to ask just a question that plays a little bit at this idea of the stepping away from the description and thinking about, okay, so we have this idea, we can sort of see ourselves on the map. We have these archetypes that we can sort of put at different positions, different times of seasons. There's identity in that. They're archetypical by nature. Sticking on this point that you said about how we have sort of the dark mother being this recent innovation, or at least finding a seat at the table recently
She's been
after.
here the whole time, but she's only recently been allowed in some sense in culture.
So, immediately my mind jumps to this idea of an increasingly what seems to be an appropriation of the dark mother. And what I say about that is, immediately what comes to mind is like a Sam Smith body shop, like an Ice Spice,
Yep.
like I'm just going to talk a Megan the Stallion type,
Good.
which is like the dark, gory, sexy details. I have my own opinions, but I'm interested to sort of hear what do you see that as being a result of the arise of the dark mother in culture? Do you see that as forms of the dark mother? Is it not the dark mother at all? Because in many ways, what you said, like this, let the dark, intrusive thoughts out, like be present, explore your identity in the space that might previously go against these ideas of purity and order that are found on the light and found at the Father, and how that sort of seeped its way into the culture, and what we can sort of begin to brainstorm as a more healthy relationship with this archetype that completely understandably, due to its immense suppression in culture for thousands of years, has, with the rise of technology in accordance, become something that has opened itself up to appropriation, has opened itself up to what's the word I'm like
Um,
looking for? Um, like sensualization. You know what I'm trying to say here?
I definitely know what you're trying to say. I definitely know what you're trying to say.
Pick it up from that thought. It'll come back to us at one point in
Yeah.
the conversation. Sensationalism,
Yeah,
sensationalism.
yeah, yeah. Sensationalized, spectacleized. Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is a topic I'm very passionate on, as you know, and we haven't made any content around it yet. So please signal to me or give me whatever feedback would be helpful to slow me down or to, because sometimes, I can get very excited. So help guide me here. Play the father.
Yeah, and you can also, if this isn't the path that the playroom necessitates, where we could be nimble and switch. But I think it's an interesting
This is,
sort of point to make.
you and me out in our community, I think we're the ones who live in that place the most. I think we've created a vibe in which and a field in which there is space held for her, but there's not a lot of people are naturally there that we know, naturally live there. So I think this is something that we uniquely have the ability to talk about in a dynamic way, and not just in a, like, I'll say my piece and you're like, oh cool. Like, it's something we both have a lot to say on. So I think it's very fruitful. So one way, the archetypes are basically, they are the felt experience. Archetypes are the felt experience of of physiological things. That's one way to think about them. So archetypes are basically the voices of different parts of your actual body. So in the integral system, we recognize that everything has an interior dimension and an exterior dimension. And there's a dimension of the individual and a dimension of the collective. So there's Ari Nazem in this room, and then there's my inner feelings, my thoughts, my emotions, my desires. Then there's my actual body, right? Which is the exterior of me. So there's the interior of me, then there's the exterior of me. And the exterior of me includes my organs and my neurons and these sorts of things, right? It's that which can be observed objectively about me. But then there's parts of me that can only be observed subjectively,
Yeah, thank you,
right?
Zoom.
Thank you, Zoom. Um, and then, there's the field in this room that would be the interior of the collective. And then there's the actual built environment room, which would be the exterior of the collective. So to put simply, the interior environment, the mental environment, the cultural environment, the built environment, just to make it simple. The Dark Mother and all the archetypes are the voices of various impulses within the actual body and spirit. It's a system that, as you can see, has physiological layers in addition to kind of auric or subtle energy layers, right? Sometimes referred to as gross, subtle, causal, right? There's the part of you that is just from this life, and then there's the part of you that seems to have been maybe somewhere before and is probably going somewhere after, the ghost that lives within the machine, right? The machine of the body. All of these have their own voices, and we can call those archetypes. The Dark Mother is associated with dark pleasure, right? The Light Mother is light pleasure, right? The one who wants to laugh at the joke, the one who wants to be silly, be funny, right? The Light Father is the part of us that wants to put things in order, make things nice for other people and for ourselves, to set things up and put everything in its right place. The Dark Father is the one who wants to make the hard shit happen, to do the nasty things, to achieve the things, to climb to the top of the mountain. These are all impulses within us. And the Dark Mother is the one who wants to feel the thing that may be a little bit sticky sweet, maybe a little
Right.
bit, the seductress. She is the seductress, the one who seduces us. It's that voice in your head saying, why not? Why can't we feel that? Why can't we do that? Why can't I cry right now? Why can't? So she's associated with, she doesn't register pain as pain. She registers
Mhm.
pain as pleasure, right? She likes to cry. She likes to scream. She likes to be in chaos. She doesn't experience it as chaos. When someone who loves horror movies is watching a horror movie, they're not actually having a negative experience. The amount of joy or the amount of value they're getting out of the movie is how scared they are, right? How actually frightened they are, how tense it actually is. The it's correlated. Their enjoyment is correlated with the darkness, right, of it. And so it's a dark pleasure.
Yeah.
And this, for the majority of human history, was dangerous because if you allow people to tap into that, when society has no
It's
cops.
rebellious. It's naturally very rebellious. It's opposed by definition. So much of what the Dark Mother gets strength from is having something to rebel against at the end of the day.
I think I think part of that is just that our society is so against it that it comes off as rebellious. I don't think inherently it's rebellious. Like, you know, in some indigenous cultures, they have rituals of mourning or of crying or of these sorts of things that they appreciate. Even in Jewish culture, they have a day, right, for mourning, and
No,
the Wailing Wall is not a dark father place. The Wailing
no.
Wall is a dark mother place. You're going there to cry and talk about what was lost. And like people show up and they say, all right, I'll put on my little outfit to go do this. And I'm gonna really get into this vibe, you know?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's a beautiful thing. Um, so I think it's rebellious because it goes against certain things. But back in the day, we didn't have cops, we didn't have good laws to get things in order. So if everyone is just tapping into their impulses and into their dark desires all the time, they're gonna fucking ruin this little city state that we made in the Middle East or whatever we are doing. So
It's a
you
better
need
way
to
to say it.
implant the father in their mind so they self-police, right? They say, oh shit, if I tap into these emotions, I'm going to hell, right? If I feel these things, I'll fuck up society and we're all gonna literally die from like the society not running because it's a very, fragile thing. Whereas now we have security cameras, cops, lawyers, all these fathers that play the father for us. And now we
Yeah.
have the ability to play with the mother more. And so she's coming back into the conversation. Um, yeah, Satan isn't a guy for anyone who's wondering. Like, no straight man in the Middle Ages is getting seduced into sin by a vaguely Jewish looking man coming to them. It's like a super anti-Semitic thing, the like devil thing. Like, bring this like vaguely Jewish guy to you and being like, hey, like commit some sins. It's like, what are we talking about? Like, no dude, it's like, oh, you're right. No, you're getting seduced by the
Seductress. It's the guilty pleasure. That's the whole idea of it. Is it's the it's you it shouldn't be, but it is. It is a pleasure. It's the thing you shouldn't be doing. Okay, wait, I want to keep you on track and pull you back to this idea of where we're at today with the Dark Mother. Not to
yes,
fast forward you, but
yes. And there's so much to say about it that we can go into at a later date. But um uh we live in a culture where mama is coming back, but she's divorced from papa. So the feminine is being allowed now, but not in a way where the masculine is holding space for it. So like there are goth girls at every school, but they're getting bullied by the jocks, right? The jocks aren't like, oh, hey, dark mama, like, hey, we respect that you're feeling that emotion, you're tapping into it. Like, thanks for holding space for that. They're like, nah, you're weird. Like, you're not happy. Like, that's bad, you know? And like
yeah.
the, there are metal concerts, there are, music subcultures, fashion subcultures, whole subcultures that are devoted to Dark Mama. Um,
Mm.
they're not seen as valued in any sort of cultural center. I mean, there is no cultural center anymore. They do their own thing. They say this is what's cool. The country people say this is what's cool. The rap people say this, and it's all over the place. As opposed to realizing, no, this is just a part of the psyche that everyone has access to. These people are just choosing to hang out there and dive deeper into it. Um, and so because it's kind of in the shadow, it doesn't have to play nice with the other types, right? Like when David Goggins is just in a room with the other dark fathers, they're on a podcast just talking about dark father shit. And any mention of any other type is just like some weak bullshit or, oh, I'm not going to take care of someone else. I'm doing my grind. Like I'm not going to play around. Like I'm focused. I'm not going to feel some feeling in me that's not helping me. So, um, I think Sexy Red, I think, is the perfect name for her. In Spiral Dynamics, red is a level. Red is in our system sometimes what we call 2.5. I think in this Terry O'Fallon stages model, it's also called 2.5. But red is a level that's about might equals right. Red says, if I can do it, I will, right? If I have the power to do this thing, I will. If I don't, I'll wait because it's tactical, or I'll hide myself because it's tactical. But if I can get something and I have an impulse for it, I will do it. It doesn't see there as being a higher authority um, that can regulate it. Um, and
Interesting.
for a good amount of human history, we were at this stage, right? If some king could actually defeat you in battle, like he doesn't care who your god is or who his god is. He's like, oh yeah, my god's on my side. Like, yeah, Thor is with me to come like crush you, motherfuckers. It's it's only with like Christianity and some of these things where it's like, nah, wherever you are on planet Earth, you have to answer to Jesus. It's not like your local God can't just go like kill some other dude because he's like stronger today. you know, like Athens and Sparta. It's just like, who's God stronger? Like,
Mm.
is it Athena or is it Ares? Whereas with, the 3.0 level, you say, no, there's a book we all follow. That's fundamentally always true, above my desires, above my impulses, right? Level 2 is the level of impulses. Level 3 is the level of codes. Um, so Sexy Red is the Dark Mother at Red. She's the Dark Mother at 2.5. She's
Right.
what the Dark Mother looks like when the Dark Mother answers to no one, when she does whatever she wants to do. And what's funny is she wears devil horns. She'll wear, like, she understands the significance of what she's doing, whether she knows it or not. She naturally adopts those artifacts because they help accentuate her message, which is, let's feel whatever we want to feel. Let's do whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
Um, and it's okay to be sexy. It's okay to throw ass. It's okay to do all this stuff, which I totally agree with. The thing is that it needs to be in harmony with the other levels, and it needs to be in
Yeah.
harmony with the other types. And so her Dark Mother is a red Dark Mother that doesn't want to fuck with the cops, that doesn't want to fuck with anyone else at any of the other levels. And so I'm glad that it's in culture and it's
Mm.
giving some access to that archetypical energy, but the level that it's coming at is making it hard for it to integrate with other energies. And there's something to say about Doja Cat and stuff as well.
Wow, very interestingly put. For those who are watching at home and have said for the last whatever, we've been talking an hour and 15 minutes, like, well, this is very interesting about the types, but like, where's the sort of real world application of this? Like, jump to this clip in wherever we put this at this second mark, because I just want to make the point here in particular. A lot of the culture war battle is around the Dark Mother archetype.
It is.
Um,
It's
it
so
is it is the Fox News clip of Megan Thee Stallion or of Sam Smith or of Sexy Red or of Ice Spice saying like this is the corruption of the youth. This is this is the devil incarnate. This is the deviant behavior. This is the stuff that needs to be rooted out. Um, and I think, listen, the truth of it is, I don't think it's exactly a straight victim relationship. I think there's a lot of dark mother media that has sort of begin to really wrap itself in this identity as the outcast, as the inclusive, or sorry, the inclusively exclusive sort of group, right? Like uniquely inclusive of these really fringe things that maybe haven't been included before, but are really opposed to norms, to order, which is so obviously dominant in culture. Now, I think so much of this is true what you're saying, which is the order half of archetypical development has had a lot more years to have level development, to have really advanced stages of work done by spiritual leaders or government leaders or artists or servants or sages, or all of the types around have operated in a world that is overwhelmingly light father with these little components of light motherly and dark fatherly energies. And the dark mother just hasn't really had, like you said, that seat at the table. And I wonder if, because it's so new, and again, these things, the dark motherly energy has been around for as long as all the other energies, but
in the first chapter of the Bible. Like
right.
the Bible is there in opposition to her. They know who she is, right? She's the
Yes.
horror of the apocalypse and Revelation. Like, she's the temptress. Like, she's in every chapter of the Bible. Even the cross is a reference to the fact that we're focusing on the chakras or on the chain of being. We're focusing on the mind over the body. We're focusing on the father over the mother. And that's why we see the upside down crosses these days that Playboy Cardi wears, and that a lot of people wear as a reclamation of the mother, a reclamation of South, a reclamation of the body, a reclamation of, no, that's where divinity is. But we need an integration, right? Not just the opposite. Um, yeah, you're right. There's been so much more development in the father worlds, and I also think it's important to mention that every part of the system technically is an archetype. I think this is something that gets confused sometimes. Like level 2 is an archetype. Like that is a type of person who's at level 2, or a type of a feeling of being at level 2, um, which is the realm of impulse. And so there's a difference between the dark mother and impulsivity, right? And that's where I think sometimes the culture gets confused, is like traditional religion, which is 3.0, or like Fox News or Ben Shapiro, right? These, what in integral we call amber, what in spiral dynamics we call blue, what in Terry O'Fallon system we call 2.5 or 3.0. The conformist traditional mythic stage is meant, it's a part of the psyche that is trying to regulate these crazy biological needs and these emotional desires, or these sexual desires. It's the level that's trying to say, well, guys, we got to do shit on time. We got to put things in order. Let's not get too crazy. And so it is hyper vigilant on level 2. It's hyper vigilant on desire and impulse. And the whole narrative of a lot of mythic religion is you're in a war between these two forces, between the body and the mind, or Satan and God, whatever, however you want to name those two forces. They call the mind God, which is crazy. But because why isn't God in the body? I don't know. Well, because nature and the right, because nature and the body are symmetric, right? So if you're creating a agricultural civilization and you're whipping oxen all day, right? And you're making the natural world do something that it may not necessarily want to do, it's hard to have a philosophy of, oh, we're with the cycles of nature, right? You have to be with the father who's
Yeah.
putting order on this messy thing. So they get tripped up because these traditional worldviews are looking at Sexxy Red and these people and saying, this is just straight impulse, right? This is just straight impulsiveness. This is just crazy, brazen, sexuality with no morality, blah, blah, blah. And maybe there is some of that in there. But from an integral perspective, we would say we need to have healthy access to our impulses. We need to have access to the lower chakras. We need to have access to our own level 2 and keep that healthy, because it never goes away, right? It never goes away. It's always a part of us. It's mentioned in every chapter of the Bible. You can't talk about light father values without mentioning dark mama, because there's no light father without dark mama,
Right.
right? So this is a part of us that's here to stay. You can never exile it. We've seen what happened in the church scandals with the altar boys and these sorts of things. That's what happens when you put dark mama in the shadows. Your dark mama desires have no place in you. And so they take control of you and come out of you in a subconscious way and make you do horrible things. We need to hold space for dark mama and bring her into the awareness so that she can be expressed in healthy ways. And so she doesn't fester in the shadows. And that is why I'm happy about Doja Cat and Sexxy Red and all these people at least coming into awareness. It
Mm.
it first needs to come into awareness before it can become fully healthy. But just for us to get relationship to it, and I think a lot of young people today are saying, "Oh, this is an energy that's okay and that is real." It's not integrated yet, but at least it's arising. Um, and I mean, you can really see. Yeah, I was going to go down the Doja Cat path because she's probably the most interesting one. But
No, I think we've covered it. I think we've covered
we've
it.
covered.
That was great. Wow, it's so interesting. Anyways, me and you will bookmark it and come back to it another time, because I
Yeah,
think this is the first time we've really actually talked about these examples in particular. It's very interesting.
yeah. Yeah, I think this is probably just the first of many, me and you. Like, we it's so great. So okay, Dark Mama, archetypes. I'm glad we tapped into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Cool, dude. That was crazy that just came out. I mean, I remember, for the viewers back home, Ari and I were kind of smiling about it because the archetypes, when I visited you for your birthday now 7 months ago, 8 months ago, we just sort of like jammed around that. Very much this style, a little bit shooting the shit, like, and we sort of came out with it like the first V1 of the archetype system. So it's just fun to sort of revisit it. Naturally, of course, that's what would come up in this playroom session, even if it wasn't the prescribed plan. Like, this is our jam. So
Well, that was V6. No, that was V5. And then I think, or maybe V5 or V6, but we had made a few before, but this is like a new one. We were trying to orient it with the
Be one of the one that is now,
Dominant.
you know what I'm trying to say? The closest to, I think, what you have now on that board came out of the Playroom session a few months ago.
Here, back right over there in the corner.
Yeah.
Well, I can't see it, but yeah, we were over there and you were using the blanket I have that has the four seasons on it, and we were putting these archetype cards on it and trying to make it all work. Um, I think I need to take a bathroom break, a little intermission for a second. And I do this every episode because I have a small bladder, unfortunately. Um, and I drink a lot of water. But if you would like to say a message to the people, to the camera, while I'm away, and I won't see it until it's posted. So this can be a point you want to make.
Sure.
And I'll set a little timer for like, 3 minutes. So I give you some time to say what you need to say. I'll go and I'll come back.
Okay.
Message to
Do
your
it.
people, message to anyone.
Okay. Wow, on the spot here. Uh, what I would say to those watching at home that are now just listening to me, Ari's been doing this now for, more than a year. And in many ways, this is such a work in progress that a lot of really smart and incredible people have been involved in. So if you've made it this far in the podcast, congratulations, because you've listened to hopefully what's a lot of helpful rambling that is now beginning to border on more than just rambling, but a really efficient and effective way to talk about how we're living. Um, and the idea of the system in Ancestor at its core is to address things that are going on in our daily lives in a really in an integral way, a spiritual way, a physical way, an emotional way, a social way, a relational way. But it's also like simple. It's just a vocabulary. We talk about it all the time. It's just a vocabulary, and Ari's been thinking a lot about how to sort of to bring these things to life and to make these things real. And the podcast that we're doing now, this like Playroom, is one version of it, and it might go away next week. It might continue, but we really invite you to be part of this conversation. If you've made it this far, seriously, if you have sort of thoughts on the way that this should be presented, if you have just critiques on things that we've said so far, like I think one of the things that Ari and I both really pride ourselves on is there are people in this world who are trying to build an integral podcast or an integral system or something like that, but truthfully are beholden to interests that are not incredibly integral. And we're trying to do this the right way. And, I'm proud of Ari for all the work that he's done. Before he gets back, I get to just say that. And I'm happy to have been a part of it in my own little small way. But as we continue to move forward, and in using the podcast and the Playroom and the wiki and some other writing that hopefully Ari will put out in the near future, the goal is to just have an amount of content that people can interact with, and everything is welcome. And it's helpful to hear from people that aren't us two. One of the reasons that Ari and I do this well, we think, is because we have enough similarities. But it's valuable to have, of course, in a true integral system, in a true integral system, is to have the coordination and the collaboration and the cooperation of people who might listen to this and just straight up disagree, and that's fine. So yeah, that's basically that all my impromptu pitch I can give. Hopefully Ari comes back soon. Yeah, and until he does, I'll just say last thing, which is going through this process of having these outward conversations and then inwardly reflecting. If you're someone that, again, that's made it this far, maybe there's one or two things that we've said that you can really hold on to. Ari and I talk a lot about how it's easy to forget. It's easy to watch something like this, think this is the most incredible thing, and you go down the rabbit hole. Maybe you even spend a few days on the wiki or thinking about your own life and the archetypes or something that we've said. but it's really difficult to remember. So find a way to jot some notes down, or start keeping voice memos, or set yourself reminders, get some friends involved, because Ari and I find all the time that it's really easy to forget. And some of these brilliant conversations, well, I think they're brilliant, but brilliant conversations that we've had can sort of lose their through line if we're not diligent about creating, Ari says all the time, like the container or the space to sort of capture and hold the stuff that we've been talking about. So if there's a way for you at home, one of our friends, that you could reach out to us. You can do it on your own. Yeah. Other than that, I feel like now I have to fill the space until Ari gets back. Because, oh, whoa, wow, wonderful timing. That was perfect. I just gave like I think it was good. You'll see it when you watch the recording.
Okay, good. Very good. I put on my little Dark Mama
I
chain.
see.
Um, okay. So we did a little bit of system talk, cultural analysis. Um, let's keep it going deeper. We're pointing, at the body. Let's go into the body. And so, let me ask you some questions. I think there's been some topics recently that have been really exciting, and that I would love to hear your perspective on. This idea of the lower levels. I mean, we've been talking about Dark Mama and the amazing benefits, or the things that we need to be in touch with about Dark Mama. But there's also some dangers, which is a lot of, what we already know in the culture. Talk to me about these getting these lower three levels in order, these lower three kind of domains of life. This is something we've been talking about recently. I'm kind of just going to leave it open-ended for you to go in there,
Sure.
maybe give some background on what's been going on in your life, why that's come up, and the journey that you've been on with working with those lower energies.
Yeah. Um, you know, the what I said at the beginning of this is my home base is the fourth, what we call is like the fourth level, the heart, a lot of the fourth intelligence, this empathetic intelligence, emotional intelligence. It's like my bread and butter. And I really use that a lot of the times as my platform in my life to create off of. So I really use this like sort of, a lot of my greatest ideas, the things that I really get inspired by, are something that someone who loves me has introduced to me, or has come up in an event, through a program, a type of music, a genre that I love. And I really, sorry, I can't hear you.
Through relationship, like through you learn a lot through relationship. You get
Yes,
input through relationship. Some people get input just by thinking or by kinesthetic feeling, but you get a lot of input through relationship to the heart.
yes. And that's definitely my ground, my foundation from which I dream. And I like to dream. I'm a creative person. I'm an artist in a lot of ways. But one of the things that I've been talking to you a lot recently is I got sort of stuck in this dream world in my life, sort of coming to an end of, I was playing professional soccer and the season ended a month ago, and sort of been left in this void of what do I want to do? Right. And I had been waiting for this moment for so long, been waiting for like this moment when all of the dreaming that I had done over the last year could really just come to fruition, and I could spend all my time just chasing after my dreams. And I don't mean it dismissively because I don't have those dreams anymore, because I do. But the truth of it is, I think I realized recently, and through conversation with you, that I was neglecting actually the true root, the true foundation, which are these lower, what call like the lower three levels. If you see the heart as this pivot point, what's below the foundational level one, which is this physical body survival chakra or aura or level, the second level, which has to do with sensation and this idea of aesthetic, the aesthetic intelligence, the second intelligence, the idea of craving, but also this idea of some sort of aesthetic flow or art. And the
Desire.
third, sorry,
Desire.
yeah. And the third, which is, we've talked about as being sort of split in a few ways, but this code, either the self code or this encompassing group code.
Mhm.
And I think I had really come to a breaking point of like banging my head against the wall because I wasn't making any progress on these dreams that I had. And through conversation, it became very apparent to me that because of my neglect for the health of my needs, desires, and my ego, myself in space, my self code, my group code, I had no, I was pulling at things that I couldn't reach. And so recently I've been really trying to, I told you I got this like new small little passport memo journal. And I think it's, the first, the second, and the third levels are pretty 3D. They're pretty in front of our faces. There's stuff that we're interacting with every single day. And I think this idea of building the container to sort of take a step back. The first point is realize I had disconnected from my foundational roots. The second was, how do I sort of, before I just think I need to fix three, I need to fix two, I need to fix one, these really impulsive thoughts. The second sort of part of this is build the container. So build the physical space around me, like find the gym for one, or buy a few more items in my personal space that keep me desiring things good instead of desiring things that are shit, desiring things that actually make me feel negative, desiring things as an escape instead of a reward. And three, is becomes a little bit more social, but is at the same time individual, which is really center the self. Center the self. Who is Matthew now? What is Matthew now? Are really big questions that I can create little tools for by talking with friends about the stuff that I'm looking for, by keeping better track of like my social space and how, the cafe that I'm working at or the street that I'm walking on is something that I can interact with in a code way. Like, does this fit with Matthew? Does this not fit with Matthew? So that's sort of two, is build the container. First, identify it. Second, build the container before you begin. And the third, and this is something that I almost jumped the gun on when we talked offline about this a little bit, is just do it. Just do it. I know it's a little bit of a specific thought to my life and your life, and we share these things, but I do think that it's common. I think it's common for people who will be involved in watching this podcast, or our friends, or general people who are participants in culture, is there is an expectation that, for example, let's talk about level one. Let's talk about this idea of the body or the needs or this really like physical foundational level,
Yeah.
this root.
Sometimes we call it health, just straight up health. or
It's maybe the best place to start for this example, because I think, let's say you, and I'm being a little bit speculative, but I think I'm right, which is the culture's idea about health is like a juice cleanse or a gym membership. It's the idea of a subscription, a wholehearted subscription to a diet or an ideal or a workout routine. It's idealistic through social media, and the expectation is like full, complete health. Now, if you're just starting, or if you're sort of working backwards saying, hey, I need to like clean this up a little bit, it's easy to get to a point where you're like, oh my God, like I've been neglecting number one. I need to do like a 2 week juice cleanse and I need to hold myself to this crazy standard. I need to change my look. I need to buy new clothes. Like it has to be this fully immersive, like drop everything or bringing everything down to one. I think creating ways for yourself to just do little things, even if it's not the whole thing all at once, is a win. So, for example, let's say you've decided, and this has happened to me in my life the last week. Like, I really want to work on creating a better, more healthy relationship with my body. After the finish of the soccer season, it's natural to sort of be like, I don't really want to work out anymore. I just did it for a year, and for so many reasons that it's too long to go into here. I had a very negative relationship with playing professional sports. So, okay, I want to create a more healthy relationship with the body. Well, maybe it's difficult for me to find a gym membership right now because I was moving apartments, or I don't even know exactly the place to go. I can't find a gym. Like shit, I can't work out. Guess that's it. No, like, all right, like maybe I have to run to a meeting, but like I'm thinking about the body right now. I'm thinking about the health. Like I could do 5 minutes of push-ups. Like I'm standing at the aisle at the grocery store and like I want to buy like a pint of Ben and Jerry's. Like, okay, maybe I won't buy a pint of Ben and Jerry's. Maybe I'll buy a pint of Ben and Jerry's tomorrow, maybe in 2 days, maybe in 3 days, but like incrementally making small changes. I think particularly for the bottom three, and maybe for the entire idea of the level system,
Right.
it really has been a helpful thought for me. So that's sort of my 1, 2, 3 on the lower levels. 1, 2, 3.
I love it. I love it. I think so well said. You know, I think this, we were talking earlier about this idea that whatever we shine awareness on grows, right? Like whatever we put our attention on, it heals, right? There are a lot of quotes about this from Jung, from Freud, from all these people, where like Freud always says, wherever it is, I shall be.
Right,
Like
right,
whatever this thing I see as other than me, I want to go and embody it and bring it back in. Jung talks about that, which is as long as there are things that are unconscious, they rule us, basically. I forget the exact quote, but Cole just said it in Playroom 3, so go check that out. But and the first step is just actually just dropping into I1, right? I1 is the kinesthetic intelligence. It's even if I'm not playing sports right now, my kinesthetic intelligence is here, right? There is an intelligence right now telling me where my body is in space, the temperature of the room, how my voice is vibrating in my chest, right?
no,
This is all information that's coming in, and there's a sensitivity to this information. And so just tapping into that, even if you're in line at the grocery store, just being like, whoa, I'm embodied right now, and dropping into that,
yeah,
naturally the relationship that forms between you and the body results in positive action, right? I think this is one of the things we see with the second chakra. Very few people these days are trained to actually have a relationship with the second chakra or with the desire center. And it's something that comes out at nighttime or when no one's looking or when, you're all alone. It's not something that we actively integrate into our daily life and just say, what are my desires right now? What are the impulses that I'm feeling arise? And then when you look at it consciously, you can say, well, how do I manifest that in a healthy way? Okay, I'm
mm,
feeling some sort of a draw towards consuming something. Okay, what's the best sort of thing I can consume? Let me have a watch list of stuff that I'm excited to read or to watch. So when it's time to consume some content, I'm actually consuming things that I'm really excited about or looking forward to, as opposed to just whatever's the first on my feed, right?
right,
Um, or
yeah,
maybe I actually need to create something right now, right? Maybe I actually need to put something out of me. And so when you shine awareness on it, it starts to reveal its gifts as opposed to, if you never shine awareness on the body, it's just going to say something when it's in pain or when it's hurting, because that's the only time it can get your attention, right?
right,
Same thing with the desire system. If you only allow, desires to come out in a very hidden way, only the hidden desires are going to really manifest, and you won't even be able to see the desires that may be taking you in positive directions, right?
right.
The ones that are trying to help you create things or generate things in other ways. And so, the second chakra is associated with the genitals and with kind of the sexual urges and sexual drives. And there's, ability to expend it, but also an ability to invest it, right? Or to create life. There's this pleasure aspect of it, but there's hollow pleasure if you're just, blasting it into the void. There's also a way to invest that pleasure into something that is generative. And that's, we would say, the healthy version of the second chakra is investing that desire energy into something that blooms. Um, and that all starts with just awareness, and relationship with these different intelligences that are within us.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think what you said is really beautiful about the relationality, because it's both ways. It's if you're working on something that's I4 or chakra 4, if you're working on improving your expressional intelligence, your I5, the the healthier you are, the clearer you understand your desires, the value you hold in space to yourself and to others, and your ability to relationalize, to rationalize and to relationshipize these impulses that you're feeling through the body, through the desire, through the ego, through the self, will allow you to express yourself at the highest possible level. And as you express yourself at the highest possible level, you can use that expression to create healthier mechanisms, to create clearer desires, to create a better sense of the self, to create deeper relationships and emotionality.
Right.
I think there's something really beautiful about the parallel. This is why we strive for integration. Is like it's not a hierarchy. It's a beautiful game.
Right.
And the more that the dreams that I've had in the last week or month or year, I sort of think, oh fuck, like I got to go backwards. I have to build the table. I have to clean up some of the desires. I have to, work on the ego a little bit to feel a little bit more comfortable in space. But maybe my first thought in the past would have been, I need to find cooler friends, right, for the ego. But maybe because I'm really working on this I5, I think, wow, maybe I can change up the way that I express myself. Maybe it's the clothing that I wear. Maybe it's the style of my hair. Maybe it's my ability to speak a new language. Personally, for me, like actually, there's been a lot of embrace between my fifth intelligence, this expressional intelligence in a completely new language, and sort of re-solidifying this second ego, this second self, both personal code and social code. And the last thing I'll say on this is, in this conversation with you, when I was sort of struggling for this dreaming, it was actually, I felt like an old version of a personal code, an old ego, an old, like a remnant in the chakra 3 that sort of was screaming out like, hey, bro, like we've worked on some skills down here. Like we've done some cool things in the past to really work on the dream building, to work on the health and the desire. Like we've used these tools. And I was saying, I'll just, to say a little spoiler, one of the things I said while you're away is it's easy to forget. It's really easy to forget. And we talk about this all the time. And to remind myself to have, I wish, and I will in the future, should this happen to me again, have a little bit of a better bookmark to say, you know what, like my code's a little bit out of whack right now. And I can go back and read some of the thoughts that I had about this and make that process quicker in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I think and you could say there's even more little voices than we've categorized, but I think the best map is one that we'll use and that is memorable, right? And seven's already enough to keep track of, right? This idea of, okay, physical health, desires, routines and goals and structures, emotions and or relationships, really, expression and truth. The fifth chakra also rules kind of the mastery of a unique skill or unique craft to you.
Yeah.
Knowledge, learning, understanding things about the world, and a connection to something higher, and a connection to the deep meaning of things, and to the all. Those are 7 life areas. That's already a lot to keep track of. And I think you're right that often when we find ourselves in a bind, or when I found myself in a bind, it's like you're letting one of those run the show, You know, it's just your relationships at the expense of your body, at the expense of your own desires, at the expense of your own expression, right? It's just
Right.
your goals at the expense of your body or at the expense of your spirituality or of real knowledge, right? Or of learning new things. You know, it's just your desires at the expense of your health or at the expense of your intellect or at the expense of your relationship, these sorts of things. And how do we create a roundtable where each of these parts of ourselves have a voice and have veto power on the other ones and can say, actually, no, health takes priority today. And that is just as, and we recognize how valuable that is, especially because it's not natural to us, right? For me, I've had a big journey with the third chakra or with the third intelligence, really more than the third need, but the third intelligence, which is practical intelligence, and learning how to hold space for it and recognize it, even though its voice is very dim and very faint, and I have to listen, twice as hard to hear what it has to say. It's it's the weaker parts of ourselves that have the biggest gifts to give us, because we know how to do the good things. You know how to do the emotional stuff. I know how to do the spiritual stuff. It's the stuff that we're not great at that has a lot of medicine for us to uncover. Um, and knowing that it's a part of you, I think, is the first step, right? Just getting in touch with, no, this is real. I have access to this. This is
Yeah.
intelligence that lives in me. That's what we're hoping to give people with an understanding of the system is it's not, oh, I'm a spiritual person. Oh, that's a practical person. Oh, that's a heady person. And I'm an emotional person. It's we all have all these people inside. They just speak at different volumes. Um, and how do we give them room in us? And as a culture, how do we give them room to have spaces? Um, and maybe that's the next thing as we look forward. You're in Israel right now. I'm moving to LA soon. I think both of us are in a transition period and excited to start building things in the world and in public more so. Um, what are some of your thoughts or some feelings or some ideas that we can just seed right now, about how you're thinking of maybe finding ways to hold space for this in your own life or with others?
Wow. What a wonderful question. Um, I think my first thought is, we've talked about the fact that I love the South, that I'm a beer, that I'm a motherly person, and that I think I've really been working on and need to continue to work on creating that healthy balance in my life to create um, the healthy father voice inside and outside. So I'll get very tactical because I know that that's like, system talk. But, um, for the last, well, for the last ever, I've been in a life where the structure was pretty well defined for me, right? Like I grew up and I went to public school for, 18, not 18 years, 13 years, and went to college and was there for 4.5 years and had like a little break before I moved to Israel to play professional soccer. But again, was in like, this this thing that I really began to revolt against in the last few months has been, I'm just sick of this structure. I'm sick of this structure that's not mine. I don't own this. Like this is something that's being forced upon me, and it's not the way that I would do it myself. What's so hard is that coming out of that now, and this sort of goes back to your question of like, how do you feel post soccer? It's like naturally, this is something I'd been craving, the idea to be able to get up in the morning and like walk down the street and sit in a coffee shop and like overhear some dude talking about like there's this artist coming to the Dead Ale and like he's gonna play like, and I'm like, oh shit, like this is like a super, this guy came a couple days ago. He's like this Ethiopian artist. This guy's like got like a trap sound, like super interesting, like Ethiopian trap, Jewish in Hebrew, playing at like this pretty dark. I mean, you've been to the TED Air, like a pretty dark ass place in Tel Aviv. And like, part of me is just like, I just want to engross myself in that experience. And these all of a sudden, like all these thoughts go off in my mind. Well, like we haven't found a job yet, or we don't have the structure that we're supposed to meet somebody, or maybe tomorrow we have something to do, we have a meeting, but all these thoughts sort of begin to pop up. The structure thoughts that are the ones that I use because I had practice at 6 a.m. in the morning, because I had a game on the weekend, because I had a test, because I had an application.
Right.
And I think my natural impulse right now is, because of this freedom, I need to search for that familiar ground of, but like there's a test tomorrow. So like I can't go out. Like that's just a familiar pattern, routine. Instead of being like, whoa, like for a very long time now, I've been praying for this moment to be my own boss, to be really in charge of my life. And before I just hand that back to something, let me create like the healthy version of that inside, sort of that healthy father character, to be the guider, to be the caregiver, to be the warrior at times, to be the king, um, because I don't want to subscribe to someone else's king again. I'm sick of that. And I know that because of the balance we've talked about, my B will be more efficient. I'll be able to spend more time in the presence of the South if I have that container around me that either I've built or I found someone to build around me. So I really think like what would I want somebody in my life to hold me accountable for right now? What am I going to hold myself accountable for? Is being picky and intentional about finding like the right person or people. And we've talked about this idea of fields, right? Like, can I get myself into the right psychic field, the right social field, for me to get just like a little bit of motivation and inspiration on how to create the right version of this for myself right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so beautiful. Um, yeah, I mean, for most of us, for myself, this was definitely the case. And it sounds like what you were talking about, like the version of the father we have is kind of an adolescent version of the masculine, which is it's very afraid of other people's opinions. It's very concerned with worldly success and with achievement. It's judgmental. It's very comparative. It's yeah, it's like a little teenager, and it evolved when we were teenagers and trying to get
Yeah,
trying to get to Stanford or trying to get through Stanford or whatever it is and get into the right fraternity and this and that and look good on the job interviews, blah, blah, blah. And that's the voice that helps you do those things, right? That's actually an effective strategy for those life conditions.
sure.
And those life conditions have changed, and a higher version or an older, more mature version of that archetype is needed to replace the old one, or that archetype needs to grow up to recognize, okay, or the world of tests and aceable, um, that voice works in a world where there's always daddy, right? There's always someone who has the answer. The
Yeah.
adults made this Stanford school. They have the test. If we just ace the test, we're going to be fine, kiddo. So you don't got to think for yourself. You just need to ace the tests and thread the needles, right? It's a voice that works in that world. But the world that we're in now, in our own lives as well as in culture, and especially doing the work that we're trying to do, there's no test to ace. There's no easy answer. There's no like future civ test that if we just bubble in the right bubble, suddenly the
Oh,
world is going to emerge and we're going to be in level 5 civilization. It's like this requires flexibility, play, earnestness, failure, grace, openness, dancing with these things that are out of our control and that are emergent from the minds and bodies of many, many, many people. And so the father needs to grow up and to learn how to allow the mother, not just as a tactical thing so we can do more father stuff, but to recognize her intelligence as being valid and learning how to support her and not always just say, that's nice, honey, you take the kids for a minute and have them have fun. And then when it's time for work, come back to me. It's like, no, maybe mama leads the work this time and papa supports the work happening, and papa sets up the space and holds the container so that mama can dance because maybe this time dancing is the work, right?
bravo. Bravo. If there's one thing, if someone's watching this, like if there was one part that I would want them to see, if there's one thing that like I really feel like we're most equipped to talk about, truthfully, just because of the experiences in life that me and you have had. Like the exact, I really want to hit this because the father that we've developed, and that is the father that the society that we behave in traditionally really maxes out at, is the one with the scoreboard, is like with the scoreboard.
Went
The
by
father
level 3.
loves that scoreboard. He loves that scoreboard, and the mother to a certain degree behaves and develops within the same sort of perspective as well. But I really think for me and you, the mother was the first to say like, I don't want to play with the scoreboard anymore. Like, it's not that I don't fuck with this scoreboard. It's like, I don't really fuck with the scoreboard at all. Like, I don't really fuck with this ranking. I don't really fuck with this data, like supposedly analyzing like every intelligent thing that I've done or haven't done. And I think when we talk about the father growing, I'm in my own life right now, I'm really highlighting what I'm sure many people at 23 and 24 really feel like. It's like an incredible amount of pressure to say, I don't really want to look for that father again, because everything in your brain has been wired intentionally to scream out, where is he? Like, what's the game? What's the scoreboard? What are the rules? Like, when's the date by which I have to have the apartment completely furnished by? And how long, what's the most efficient gym membership that I can find? But a lot of my psyche is screaming out like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, if we're gonna do this scoreboard thing, like we have to own it as our own. We got to make it our own thing.
Right.
And this is a personal thing that we can follow up on after. But in my own life, like I still think, for anybody that's watching this, this isn't like like fuck the man. Maybe it is a little bit of a fuck the man, but like no. But you could. The idea is you can
Old
bring
man.
this.
Fuck,
Sorry.
fuck the old man.
Yeah.
Fuck it. But
Yeah.
just I'm not gonna swallow it lock, stock, and barrel. I'm gonna take its wisdom and I'm gonna combine it into something bigger. Like the version of the father we have access to is the modern father, right? It's the technologist, the achiever, the entrepreneur, the one who goes out there and plants the flag, right? And that father has kind of been thrown out in postmodernism because we're like, wait, maybe the flag you planted was on somebody's land, or maybe someone was there, or maybe all these sorts of questions.
Exploited a shit ton of people in order to build the flag, or like that wasn't really your flag to begin with. Yeah.
Right. And like, okay, we got to this place, but now what? And then, Mark Andreessen is writing the Techno Optimist Manifesto, and he's, I don't know what the fuck he's doing, wearing a three-piece suit, sitting there and or whatever the hell he's wearing on Sand Hill Road, shining his egg, writing, people want us to be pessimists. I refuse. Like, the torch of progress is lit again in my heart. Like, rise again, techno optimists, and let us set the world on fire. It's like, Chief, that's great. And you would be really popular in 1700, you know? And like,
Yeah. Look, me and you talked a couple months ago about Brian Johnson and this idea that like life is the score, like whatever. If you're watching the podcast, like, if you've made it to this point, like we can speak freely, that life is the scoreboard, that literally the only point that you can get is like by not dying. and I think it's like bang, that's the old man, this like weirdly perverted, degenerate, like holding on to this idea that like we're just gonna tech the fuck out of this shit and like never die.
yeah, it's the craziest like father supremacy shit of all time. It's like, oh, my body like has a natural termination date. Like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, oh, there's like cycles to nature, and like things transition from one season to the next, and like maybe that's just part of life, is like aging and these sorts of things. Nah, can't do that. I agree. Maybe people don't have to die at 40 years old. Maybe we can extend life, but it's this reductionism to the first chakra. It's this reductionism to health as being the only thing that matters. And it's like, homie, you're living however many more years, but 6 hours of your day, 8 hours of your day is just focusing on the body. Like we're actually on this, like we're evening out. Like me spending 1 hour on my body and like being with people and doing shit the rest of the day. Like I might die at 100 or whatever. But anyways, um, I think this is this is a struggle that we're having as men and we're having as a culture right now is how do we reintegrate the father after postmodernism, not just go back to the father of before postmodernism, right? Who denies all these postmodern insights. What if
And who are the influences, Ari? I mean, like, I don't want to jump into you, but like, who are the positive influences? Like, if you're a guy that's watching this, like, the odds are the algorithm or your friends have pumped you like, oh, you're looking, okay, you don't want to do the scoreboard thing. You want to build the internal father. Here's Goggins.
right,
Here's Tate. Here's Rogan. And it's like, this it's backwards, but it's dangerous because it's not integrated, right? It has, of course, it's like really primal. There's a beauty to it. These people are very good at what they're doing,
right?
but
They're true, but it's partial, right?
it's an absence. There's an absence of role models.
Yeah. They are breathing life into the code father. They're breathing life into the level 3 father, right? The father that's obsessed with discipline and getting things done and achievement and success and following orders, right? They're breathing life into that father. And that's a part of us that hasn't actually been developed as much as it needs to in a healthy way. It's been developed in relationship to systems. It's like, oh, I'm in school and I'm gonna get screwed if I don't do well on this test, so I'll develop the father. I think what's resonating with people about Goggins or Rogan is it's more of an internally motivated,
Right.
healthier version of level 3 where it's like, well, it doesn't matter who's out there. It matters that I'm getting up and going to the gym because I think that's important for me and developing a relationship with myself and holding myself to a
Which
high.
is great. Which is great.
And it is one level of the masculine, right? And there is a masculine at level 4 that knows how to hold space and knows how to step back and knows how to respect the feminine wisdom and bow to the feminine wisdom and be replaced sometimes by a feminine perspective when that is more what needs to be shared. Right. And it uses that same masculine power to protect and defend and advocate for that which is more fluid and maybe doesn't want to by its own nature to say something. Maybe it speaks, as a representative of or someone who goes into the battle for the queen, who by definition, you look at like an anthill, the queen isn't going out and talking to the wasps and talking to the other homies. The queen is doing what the queen needs to do, which is creating life. The queen is the heart and center of the colony, and she's literally birthing the future colony, right? And there are people that need to enter and care for her, right? And take care of the feminine. The healthy green, the healthy level 4 is you don't turn the woman into a man, right? You let the feminine do what it wants to do on its own terms. It's like, Marvel and all these guys, they're missing the point. Like, you don't suddenly make all the soldiers now chicks. It's like, yeah, that's great. And there are some chicks that want to be soldiers that couldn't be before, and they should be. And, there's still a role for the feminine that has nothing to
There's
do with
still a role for the
masculinity.
feminine. There's still a role for the actual feminine. It's
Actual
crazy.
feminine.
It's crazy. It's like the feminine, like we live in the masculine system. The only good shit is the masculine shit. And if the women want acceptance, the women just do the men thing. The woman just become like the CEO. The woman just come be the warrior. The woman just play like the, it's like this wow, motorcycle outside, young motorcycle. It's this crazy like
Shadow masculine, bro. The shadow masculine's with us.
where is the actual feminine? Why aren't we like legitimately celebrating the glory of the role of the mother? It's crazy that we're saying this as like dudes, but like it's just it's it's it really isn't so difficult to see that the people in charge have decided to appease to the frustrations of marginalized, subjugated, and oppressed voices by saying, hey, you can come join us.
in
but like
our world,
in our world.
right? It's like this idea that Wakanda would look like New York with plants. What are we doing, guys? You're telling me these people have a distinct worldview system that has its own indigenous wisdom tradition. And the thing that they result in when they have unlimited resources to manifest that wisdom tradition is just like a really dope, like, Chelsea, you know, Chelsea building with like some nice plants hanging off the side. Like it's the craziest shit. It's like the lack of education. It's like, oh yeah, when people from like a different worldview just create some, it just looks like our shit. They're just black.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about, guys? Like,
So here's a critique for those integralists who have made it to this point in the podcast, which is you can't
and
you
by
take
no
this
means integral. Let me just say that we're trying to be. I don't think you can ever be. I think it's an archetype that's always escaping us, but we're trying as 24-year-old young men who know jack shit.
idea
We're playing towards, hence the playroom, working towards,
playing.
feeling towards what it would look like to hold space for these perspectives. Maybe right now we're talking out of our shadow masculines. I'm sure there's parts of us that are gleefully taking stabs at the schoolyard bullies that we just like. You know? So I just want to preface by saying that we are by no means under the illusion that we're postmodern, meta modern, integral overlord mega minds. I think we're very aware of the fact that we know jack shit, but
Yeah.
and that there are many of these perspectives and we're trying to hold space for them and probably failing, but at least showing up. So just put it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, listen, it's beautifully said. I think the all we can hold ourselves to is being really authentically genuine um about how we try and present these ideas and as best we can, trying not to um me and you had this conversation a long time ago about uh, some of the YouTube videos that we were consuming about people who were involved in the spiritual world, people who were talking about sort of levels of development in a really amazing way, and who were at the same time like putting on like for-profit like concert and festivals and really like a profitable or capitalistic functions sort of coming out of this idea of like enhanced spirituality or community, stuff like this. And I think I bring it up because I think this Wakanda example is an interesting one, which is um, there's such a gravitas to the system that we're in right now that I think one of the pitfalls that me and you see so often in ourselves and with other people who we talk to about these things is like to just turn it into like a web series or to turn it into a one time a year event or to to gentrify it or to appropriate the idea.
Sell it to package it in such a way, that is, yeah, to make it easily digestible. And let's hold space for orange, right? For 3.5. Let's hold space for the need for things to have inflows of money so that they can continue, and that we are in
100%.
a capitalist world that I hope to God isn't going anywhere anytime soon, because you and me are on the streets and all of us are on the streets and back to fucking anarchy, which I don't want, but it needs to be transcended and included into something beyond it. And we need to be creative and playful with, well, how do we take these structures and what comes after them, right? What comes on top of them? We need, I need a spine so that I can have a reptilian brain. I need a reptilian brain, right? We need all of it for the human being, and each level
Beautiful.
plays a role, but let's not get fixated at one of these levels, and let's keep the energy flowing up,
Well said, politically said, diplomatically said. Like,
you know? Um,
yeah,
and we hold space for the rage and for the bullshit, really, or the rejection of the bullshit.
yeah, yeah. The when I bring these ideas um, to friends of mine or people who are interested in hearing about um, like the stuff that I've read, me and you both read and talked so much about Ken Wilber, and the friends that I've introduced to that, friends that I've introduced to these archetypes or intelligences or levels, like um, you hit such a chord because the idea should be that this meets you exactly where you're at. It meets you exactly where you at, and me and you, of course, like you said, like it's easier for us to fall back into a mode where we're shooting the shit a little bit and being a little bit tongue in cheek and poking at some stuff that we think is going wrong. But the truth of it is, me and you would both agree, like we have the maximum potential ever, the maximum potential ever.
As a collective.
And the amount of knowledge we have access to is crazy, crazy. And it's important to give thanks. And I think a lot of the frustrations that me and you have shared, what I said previously about even like this dark mother appropriation, like it's easy for us to be critical because there's things that are going wrong, but the potential for using this knowledge and creating really great stuff out of it is so high, because the archetypes meet you no matter what your intelligences are or no matter what your level is, and the intelligences meet you no matter what your archetype is, no matter what your level is.
Right.
And you have dimensional experiences no matter where you're at in the system.
Yeah. That's
And
exactly.
that's the beauty.
That's the beauty of it. So well said. I mean, and I want to be clear about the levels. I think if you're just getting introduced to the levels, we're gonna have more content on that soon, like structured content on that that explains it. And in our system, we talk about the levels a little bit differently than Ken does, and that some of our elders do, because we talk about it in terms of drives first and foremost, and the idea that there's seven drives that are always with us at every moment. Seven drives: the health drive, the desire drive, or the pleasure drive, the esteem drive, or the desire to belong to a group. That's where the codes come in, because to belong to a group, you have to follow certain codes, right? And to have esteem with other people and with yourself, you need to do things on time and get things done and hold a certain standard. That's what esteem is. Esteem is reward for some energy you're investing into playing the game. You get some esteem, right? Um, the love drive, the connection drive, the intimacy drive, which is different than the belonging drive. Belonging drive is when we used to come into our fraternity house and someone says hi to you and gives you some respect, right? That's the belonging drive. But the intimacy drive is when I go back to my room with Matt and we talk about the intensity of the day, or I'm able to really share an emotion with him, a deep emotion, and he's able to hold that for me and be close to me in that way. That's different. That's the intimacy drive versus the respect drive. And these build on each other, right? There's a drive for expression, right? For me to express who I am, to look the way I want to look and do the things I want to do. There's a drive for knowledge and there's a drive for meaning. And these exist within us at every moment. But usually there's one that takes dominance, and they take dominance in sequence because they build on each other. And what like a full level is, or a meaning making structure, what's in the literature called a structure stage, is a psychic, meaning a mental psychological structure that is integrating these various drives with emphasis on different ones, right? So level 3 is primarily focusing on the esteem drive, and it recognizes that there is a need for intimacy, and it recognizes there's a need for expression and knowledge and meaning, but it's primarily focused on the esteem drive, and it's regulating all the other drives and filtering them through the lens of what gets us esteem. So it will allow pleasure if the pleasure gets us esteem, but it denies a lot of pleasure because it might be not helpful for esteem, right? And this sort of thing. So we all have all 7 drives, but we learn how to integrate them and balance them better and better through our lives. And the idea is that as a culture, we've kind of moved into this 4th level, or we have some access to this 4th level, which starts to recognize the validity of these other ones, the heart, but it can't really harmonize them. And that's why we're trying to move up into integral, which recognizes everything on its own terms and tries to harmonize them. So wherever you're at, this is something that's relevant and useful. It's not like, oh, you have to be level 5. It's like, don't worry about that too much. Think about think about the drives and trying to harmonize those drives. And from whatever perspective you're at and wherever you're at, that's a helpful exercise to recognize and hold space for these different drives. And that's what develops the meaning making system. And that's something I think we're still trying to do very actively, which is what this is a product of. I wanted to touch on states quickly because you mentioned it, or maybe not quickly. I don't care about the time. I appreciate that people have come.
I probably got like 20 minutes, something like that.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be that long. We'll see where it takes us. But that's one thing we haven't talked about too much yet. We've talked about intelligences a good amount. We've talked about levels a good amount. We've talked about archetypes a good amount. We've talked about the inner world. We've talked about the cultural world. We haven't talked too much about the built environment.
Hmm.
I'm just going through all the aspects of the system. But one of the things we haven't talked about, you briefly mentioned dimensional experiences.
Hmm.
And this is something that can be quite mysterious. Um, and maybe we'll let it continue to be mysterious. But I wanted to ask you, have you had any encounters with an intelligence beyond Matthew Frank? An intelligence that may not be here in the third dimension or here with us in space time, but seems
Hmm.
to have experience of things and relationship with things beyond that.
Um, yeah. Um, I can think of a few examples that are personal to me. And
A story like we used to do.
yeah, um, it's such an interesting question because I think my immediate reaction is, wow, some people are gonna think like, I don't know, man. I don't know about this whole like voodoo. There's some crazy people pulling the strings. Like, let me just say it like this. Let me just put it like I do. Um, a year and a half ago, I came to Israel for the first time. Um, and wow, there's a million things to talk about that. That's a podcast for another time. And, being someone who's Jewish who had never been before, um, one of the things that's so talked about Israel is like this idea of identity and return and origin and religion and the start of it all, but maybe not the start of it all, and the politicalization of it and everything. Um, but my first visit to Jerusalem and my first visit to the Wailing Wall to really the centerpiece of Judaism, which is so symbolic in so many ways. It's this destroyed temple. It's the ruins of the second temple, built in 300 and
Wow.
something
I
BC.
just felt that, dude. I just felt that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh,
What the Jewish people have done to continue to hold the lineage is ridiculous. I just want to name that for a second. What the Jewish people have done to uphold, nurture, and breathe life into the lineage, their lineage, the history of their people, and the wisdom of that tradition for thousands of years is just simply ridiculous.
yeah.
It stands out in all of human culture, really.
Yeah. You know what? Wow, it's interesting because I think I appreciate that. I want to take that, there's so many ways to take that remark. And like my first thought just between you, like it's like, are there, what are people going to think watching this? Like, where are people's backgrounds? It's such a thing that people talk about, and being far away from really like the centerpiece of the conversation, but being so close to like what's actually going on has been such an interesting part of my idea and my identity around Israel. But that's such a different part of the conversation than we're having now. But I just want to sort of put it out there.
Yeah.
Uh,
I do want to ask you, after states, maybe just a few lessons you've had from living there or cultural things that maybe we could benefit from, and maybe
sure.
closing remarks, but we can go into this place first.
Okay. So here's what I'll say about the States, bringing it back home. Um, the I've talked with a lot of people in Judaism about this idea of Judaism really holds states in physical objects. So in temples, there's like this eternal light. It's like
Right.
one of the staples of a Jewish temple, of a synagogue, of a Beit Knesset. It's like this eternal light. Um, and it's the symbolism is like there is something that passes on from body to body, from building to building, like something that jumps across the entire world is this eternal light of Judaism. The idea of tefillin, like wrapping tefillin, which is a pretty typical, like Orthodox Jewish technique done to sort of initiate prayer, is the idea of like binding yourself in God's words, right? So like if the kotel is like one example of um, the physical structure representing something that for so many Jews and something that I connected to when I was first there, it's like you get there and you're like, this is like some bricks. This is like some bricks, and like there's not anything pretty about this at all. And like I don't really feel God here. Like I don't really like feel like getting, oh my God, like what, I can't, I see the Big Bang, whatever. Like it's none of the cheesy shit that like you think.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is, you asked me if I've had an experience where I felt beyond Matthew Frank before, and I've told you this story before, but I sort of I went up to the wall and I put my hand onto the wall, and I got so fortunate that I was there on a rainy day. I was the only person outside. There's like a little inside prayer area, but I was the only person outside, which is incredibly rare. There's like very few days in,
Only person outside.
I was the only person,
I'm not
you know,
surprised that you were alone standing in the rain, lover boy. I'm not
yeah,
surprised.
and I just had this moment where I sort of allowed myself to give way to a lot of my genetic and spiritual ancestors who had died because of this idea, of there being like something here. So
Mm.
maybe I didn't feel the presence of God, and maybe the covenant is not actually somewhere in the rubble. And maybe this really is just like a bunch of stone, but for a lot of people whose genes are running through my blood and whose spirit is running through my mind, like they
Mm.
deserve to be here and to see me here. Um, and there's other moments in my life where
Mm.
I felt the presence of something else, but nothing more than that moment, like to be standing in a dream, and it's not my dream.
That's right.
It's, to be standing in this place of an immense amount of tears and joy, weddings and funerals and massacres and births, like all prayers end with like next year in Jerusalem. And
Mhm.
like for me to be standing in that space, there's so much contention about
Right.
what the physical thing is. But like you stand there as a Jewish person
Right.
who has family that died, so much family of ancestors of ancestors of ancestors of ancestors who have died trying to be here. um, and it's impossible for me to walk away from that experience and not think there's something else bigger than me here. And if more people had the context, especially here, to realize that it's not this body that matters so much about the physical space would become integrated, would become more whole, would become more understood. So that's my story of a dimensional experience.
We are remembering.
Hmm. Yeah.
We are remembering. Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt them come in very strongly because there's the ones below and there's the ones above. And that's and I felt both of them, you know.
Yeah. Um, you know,
Wow.
you asked me to sort of finish with some thoughts on, and the timing works out for me to just talk a little bit about like what I learned.
Yeah. Let me ask a specific question because there's so many ways this can go.
Sure.
And let me know what you think of this question.
Sure.
Um, and first I just want to say thank you for sharing that. Really thank you. This there's so much that's in the field right now that we don't need to say. You know, there's so much that place that you're physically in right now has so many minds trained on it and so many hearts attached to it and so much spirit blasting around it right now. The whole all eyes are on that place. Um, and I think that it can be suffocating to talk about things happening in that place that have nothing to do with what's happening right now, you
Yeah.
know, and of course it's all intertwined. But I just want to say I really appreciate you sharing that in the way that you do, which is always with an open heart and just sharing it from the bottom depths of your soul. Um, and I felt it and I was there with you. And, you know, my name is Ari because my mom wanted me to be friends with Jewish people without having to explain anything because I'm Persian and we're not Jewish. But she named me Ari because that's a Jewish name and she wanted me to be welcome in the Jewish community. And I just wanted you to know that I love you so very much. And I respect your heritage so much and the Jewish lineage so much. And I'm glad the Jewish people have a place to call home. Um, and onwards.
Thank you. Thank
Um, and given that you've been there amongst this, in many ways, new society built from people from other places, from um, other cultures, all coming together to create something new.
you.
Uh, what are a few things that you could maybe offer to the playroom, this enduring playroom of going towards a a integral civilization and integral culture? What are some things that you're going to be bringing with you as you continue to play towards some sort of integral culture that you've learned over there?
Wow. Um, there's still a lot of ways to take this question, but I'm just going to start with saying this, which is um, it's really important to be, it's really important to know what you're talking about. It's really important to know what you're talking about. And I say that like, well, you know, it's a very general statement, but like um, sitting here for a week or two as someone who's studied integral theory, who's read spiral dynamics, who's had experiences with like interpersonal relational structures, would be able to diagnose a lot of the actual behavior that's going on here that's really difficult to see from just online. Um, and uh, I just want to sort of say that as like it's important for me to say about this. It's a little bit of a trap because we think that we understand a lot of things from watching it through the lens of somebody else. And if that person or that outlet doesn't have a concept of intelligences or levels of development or archetypes, it's going to be really hard, even as someone who's trying to bring that into our lives more. It's really hard to do that when you're looking through a secondary lens. So I think it's that, you know, that's just sort of like a disclaimer up front, which is like there's so much about this place which is so close to death and pain and has such a really close relationship with the war, um, and all of its really like terrible outcomes, and is living it in a really real way, that spending some time with in person, you really begin to understand the dynamics of it. You begin to see it in context and not through the light of sensationalist, remember now, sensationalist clip. So just, sort of saying that first and foremost.
Right.
But more specifically answering your question on how I sort of see myself like, developing here, or developing in a society that's, indescribably pulled by, truthfully, uniquely, both ends of the spectrum. Like, an, it's hard for me to think about a place in the world where there is a deeper connection with death all the way down. There is a deeper connection with survival, health, level one, the body, and spirit, like all the way up.
Mhm.
And society is really getting yanked by this incredible amount of aggression, blood, death, terror, and this revolutionary, equally as dangerous, overly dogmatic addiction to religion and spirituality and meaning. Um, and I think that I really hope to see myself as somebody that can sort of pull these things together, um, as somebody who understands that the reason that the Orthodox man and the combat soldier are fighting is, not because of a bill that's transferring some money to a yeshiva, to a yeshiva instead of, it's really fundamentally a system problem. Um, and I think that it's really powerful to see these type of things on display. It's an important thing as people who are studying and learning integral theory or the system or intelligences, to find real life examples of where these things are happening and to participate in them, to say, okay, like, let me try it out. Let me ask some questions. Let me be there in person. Let me like be there where the shit is happening. Um, does that answer your question? Was there another part of that I sort of didn't get to?
Um, no, I appreciate you saying that. And sometimes the question is just a way to kind of open the field to what needs to come through anyways. And
Yeah,
I'm glad that's what came through. The question specifically, if it's interesting to you, is, you know, um, I know we've talked a lot about some of the unique things about Israeli culture and the attitude over there. And I was just personally stunned when I visited you there last year with, how when we were on the beach, just how no one was on their phone. So many people were, everyone looked very healthy. It seemed to me that not a lot of people were struggling from obesity or from some of these kind of chakra one, level one problems. People were out
yeah,
in the sun. There was a lot of socialization between the genders. Um, and it seems like there are a lot of benefits to the mandatory military service, disregarding the political aspect of that, and just
sure.
looking at it in terms of a protocol or some sort of a structure that has certain outcomes. Seems like one of those outcomes is mixing between the genders and physiological health and a deep relationship with the physical body that's developed, and with a healthy or at least a strong version of the masculine in women as well,
Sure.
which is
Yeah.
great. But
Okay.
yeah, basically a couple things that you would bring to future Civ that you've learned over there, or a couple things that you would offer to American culture or to whatever emerging culture is coming that
Yeah.
you've learned.
Yeah. First and foremost, like, there's an incredible amount of like secular tradition here, like non-religious tradition centered around spiritual ideas, which is
Mhm.
very interesting. Like, and I assume that in a future civ, in an integral civilization, there's going to be some people who are a little bit more hesitant. There, those who are not I7 dominant are going to struggle to just jump on the bandwagon of like the holy holiday. But there's an incredible amount of secular participation in tradition here, because there's been like a lot of filtering of the idea into like different intelligences and different archetypes.
Mm.
Because it's been 2,500 years, close to 3,000 years since the inception of the religion, and an incredible amount of diaspora teachings. Like there isn't like a really central, there's strong sects of Judaism like Chabad Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, Haredi Judaism, Hasidim Judaism. But the Judaism as a whole has like an incredible amount of language at this point. Literal language, like translated into like 20 different languages or more. Like the Torah, people talk about it as like this living document in so many ways. It sort of separates itself from the New Testament. And one of the beautiful things that we see in society is like a spirituality that's filtered through intelligences and types and levels, which is a beautiful thing, first and foremost. I
Hmm.
also think size is important. Like, it's a small country and that feels good. Your actions, you can't be a jackass because your actions will come back to bite you in the ass. Like, that means something. To have to be accountable and to not be anonymous. Listen, there's still ways to make yourself, people rank on social scales, but I can't foresee a functioning society that incorporates all of integral at the start, at least, that is a 350 million person country.
Totally
Seems
agree.
very difficult to me.
Totally agree.
Like the 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 relationship, you feel the family, you feel the family culture, and that changes the way that people act on the street, like the things that people offer you, the way that people treat you, et cetera, et cetera.
Totally.
But the thing that truthfully I think, I'll sort of last on this, I'll finish on this point. um, Living close to death is an important thing. Living with the understanding that tomorrow is not promised, living with the understanding that that sacrifice is meaningful when the aspirations of the individuals meet the aspirations of the community, are important things that you learn only when put to the test. And that doesn't mean that you have to create an artificial war. That doesn't mean that death needs to be a necessary part. But teaching and learning about people who gave their lives to put yourself in the position where you're at is an
Right.
important story to tell. It's an
Right.
important story to tell. And as Americans, growing up in America, it's just we're just far from that story.
Physically
Like,
far from it. Like anyone who died in an American war, I mean, the last time an American died in an American war, it was like here was like the Civil War, you know, and that's so tied up with other things, and especially on the West Coast, we don't hold a lot of space for the Civil War because it's not that relevant. We're not near any of the battlegrounds. I mean, I know we have some friends that grew up in the South, and it's so much more alive for them, but
yeah.
um, we're just far from it, physically far from it. Time wise, we're far from it. And yeah, I think that's a great point to continue to breathe life into it is something I think the Jewish people have done really well.
That's it. What a session.
What a session, dude. What a session.
I don't even know what's the time. How long did we go for?
I think like maybe a little over 2 hours,
Wow.
probably a bit over 2 hours. Um,
Anything you want to sort of cap us off with to sort of close this space that we've opened? We've talked about so many things. We've covered a lot of ground. Like, you're the shaman man. Like, how do we sort of bring this back into life, this experience that we've just shared?
um, Do you think I have some thoughts on that. Do you think there's anything that the people watching kind of from your corner of the world or your camp would be interested? Maybe not anything too crazy, but just a few words on something, or um, do you think we've said what needs to be said?
I think uh I think I said it before, but it's easy to forget, and that's okay. But when we remember, when things resonate with us, like take an extra beat, write something down, make a goal for yourself, use the sort of motivation to charge you up. Um, because we live in a really fast world and we intake so much all the time that the meaningful stuff can just kind of get lost in the chaos.
Totally.
So bookmark the good shit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think yeah, learning, most of our learning, I think, is just remembering. Like the eternal things are tr- are so good because they're eternally true and you can rederive them 100,000 times. There's a lot of day-to-day things that are kind of unique to one scenario or one person or one thing. And then there's these universal things that are always true, but because they're always true, they're also easy to forget. So, and this is what the wisdom traditions did, right? Like this is what church on Sunday did. The problem is, there was a lot of other shit in there too. And how do we regenerate those structures in their healthy aspect is, I think, something that we're playing
Yeah.
forward towards. And I will say we're making good progress on. I just got a book in the mail yesterday by Brendan Graham Dempsey called Emergentism. And he basically was like, okay, a lot of people talking about the religion of tomorrow. Like, here it is, motherfuckers. Like, a lot of people talking about like playing towards a meaning 3.0. Like, here's your meaning 3.0. And like maybe it's a bunch of shit, but like I'm taking a swing at it with like real earnestness. And I just thought that
Wow.
was tea as fuck. Like just to be like, because Ken, I mean, like Ken has a book this fucking big. You know, like this is a book called The Religion of Tomorrow, you know? Right?
Yeah.
This is a book called it's called The Religion of Tomorrow, and it's more just like a cookbook. It never like makes the dish.
Yeah.
And and someone needed to make the cookbook for someone to take a stab at the dish. But like we are people are taking stabs at this, and I think the conflicts that are going on in the world today are making us more apparent how we need these new structures of
Yeah.
meaning. Um, I think the thing that's arising for me that I'll say is something that's very alive for me right now and been alive for me for the past few months is this idea that the heart has to be the center. The heart has to be the center. And what I mean by that is, um, whether we're talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict, whether we're talking about traditional religion versus modernist values versus postmodernist values, whether we're talking about masculine dynamics versus feminine dynamics, whether we're talking about the conflicts happening between older versions of masculinity and newer ones, all these sorts of dynamics within the system, dynamics within our psyches, the system is just a map of our psyches. I think it has to be grounded first and foremost in relationship. I love you so very much. I've seen things on social media that have made me feel anger about what Israel's doing and these things. I've cried about it. I've had difficult times about it. And what's allowed me, I think, to keep a more balanced perspective and also recognize every side of the conflict is to have you over there and to love you with my full heart and to say, well, Matthew and Matthew's people have a different perspective. How do I hold space for that perspective? And how do I listen to what he's saying and not just listen to what he's saying through someone else's lens, but how do I listen to what he's saying through his lens? How do I treat it on its own terms? And I'm willing to do that because I love you. I'm willing to do that because of the relationship that we have. And I don't know if I could do that if I didn't have this relationship. I think it would be so much easier to be black and white because like there wouldn't be a real person that I can look at and be like and whose my emotions are attached to. My emotions are attached to you.
Yeah.
I love you. When you suffer, I suffer. When you're happy, I'm happy. When you connect to your ancestors, I'm right there with you. As
Yeah.
crazy as that is for people who think we're just in our bodies, like I was there with you you know,
Yeah.
and that's a different lineage from me. But because I have that heart connection with you, I was able to drop down that drain with you. So it has to be built on relationship first. Relationship first. if we can't sit on the floor and break bread together first as human beings and look at each other in the eyes and say, you know, you're my cousin. Like you're like every Jewish person in the world, every Palestinian person in the world, they are my cousins. I'm a human being. Like there was only fucking 70,000 of us at one time. You
Right.
know, like our whole species has less genetic diversity than a troop of 55 chimpanzees. Our whole species has less genetic diversity than a troop of 55 chimpanzees. We are cousins, all of us. And if we
Yeah.
can't look at each other and rest in that place first of relationality, of interdependence, of love. And that takes time, it takes effort, it takes experiences, it takes vulnerability. It's not just a thought. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not just saying, let's just imagine that we're all cousins and then we're still fucking each other over. It's let's develop relationships, right? Let's actively develop relationships. And it's through the development of that relationships that all the other stuff comes.
Right.
Um,
No, you're spot on. You're spot on. And I think it comes from like bucking up and being like, yeah, this it's not right. It's not right. Like the relationship is fucked up. You feel it here. You feel it here. The relationship is really, really, really fucked up. But there's a lot of people who are very emotionally impacted by this. The people that are that the incredible and crazy thing about, not to go on to this too long, but the incredible and crazy thing about living in this society right now that the whole world seems to be watching is like no one is suffering more pain about this than the people in Israel and Palestine and Gaza. Like there is no like this is the pain. This is the pain center. So like it doesn't really hurt. It doesn't really help for other people to just be in pain about it. It really doesn't help. Like there's a lot of people in enough. There's enough pain. There's enough pain. But the steps to create something with less pain requires us by like taking on the charge and being like, okay, I hear these words, I understand the system, and I can see pretty clearly how attachment to the level of the needs of survival, the needs of desire, and the needs of belonging in level 3 are inhibiting these people from reaching the 4th level. If you know that and you understand that, then every tactical lesson that you learn through an experience with a friend or a relationship about how to develop from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 will help you understand how to create a better world. And this is an example of that. And of course, when we're participating on online or we're participating with incendiary media, like it's easy to kind of lose the plot. Like, what am I supposed to feel? What's actually helpful for me to feel? And the truth of it is, like, there's really enough pain. There's enough pain. Like any more pain is to try to get you to stay clicking or watching. But like, how do we turn that into something that using the skills that we've talked about in this conversation into something that actually allows us to recognize each other as brother and sister, and that's like the hard work. That's the hard work. That's not solved with a hashtag, and it's definitely not solved with like a 1-minute post. Like that's the hard work that happens like hand in hand, foot next to foot, soil next to soil, and we need people that are willing to like take up that charge to start building that world.
mhm. Yeah.
And it's not easy, but it's good. It's the more that we can look through the lens of love, the more that we can look through the lens of love and hear the actual story, the more that we realize like me and him are like the same dude. They're just the same dude, just born in a different place.
You go to the bottom, we're literally have the same ancestor biologically. You go to the top, we have the same ancestor spiritually, right? My consciousness is the sun that's shining through my eyes is the same sun that's shining through your eyes outside of time. And my body is a brother, is a friend, is one cell that split off another cell. into your body. All the beings here, every atom in this universe is my relative, right? And every soul is my own self, right? How do we go down? How do we climb down the world tree, as our ancestors did, back to the root of all things? And how do we climb up the world tree, to the source? And Matthew,
Thank you, my brother, as always. Love you very much. Love the fact that this is happening, and like maybe we just spit a bunch of bullshit for 3 hours, but maybe there was like 1 good minute in there, you
yeah,
know?
and that's all it is, right? So much of life is sleeping, going to the bathroom, cooking meals, whatever, right? And then there's these moments that make it all worth it. And I'm sure for me personally, there were moments like that in here for me. And so it takes a whole lot of tapping into a tree to get some maple syrup, and takes a whole lot of oranges to make a little bit of juice. And that's
Yeah.
what play is. We're gonna show up, we're gonna fail, we're gonna try again, we're gonna have dead spots, but we're here. You and me have been shining our attention fully into this place for a couple hours, and
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
do you want to
till
play
next.
us out?
Yeah, yeah. I'll play this out.
Maybe summer days, because we're in June. It's the month of the innocent. We're getting into summertime.
Let's see. Summer days stuck in a haze. Without you, it's all the days. In my mind, you're all the craze. Ooh, baby, share your grace, share your space, share your face, take the leap of faith. We can go at your own pace. Ooh, baby, 'cause you're sweet as candy and warm like the rain. You call me and sing when we play the game. If I'm not with you, it'd be a shame. Won't you calling my name? Ooh, baby. Oh, summer days. I've been seeing you through the heat, and I'm coming to make it all straight with you, love, because you're sweet as candy and you're warm like the rain. You call me and say, we play the game. You don't know where you stay. I want you calling my name. Ooh, baby. Ay, ay, ay. It's time to go to bed.
That's a I don't know if you can see it. That's a tear.
I love you, my brother.
I love you, bro.
Till next time. Fuck. Till next time. Better next time and better the time after that. And then one day, me and you, like, this is it's special, it's important, it's meaningful, and more than anything, like I've learned so much from you. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. I'm so grateful to have learned from you, to have participated in this holy and divine journey with you, step by step with you, to sing with you and dance with you, laugh with you, and maybe say some wrong shit and maybe say some right shit, but like at least we're trying. And like I love trying, and I love trying with you. So thank you, brother.
Thank you, bro. You've been here the whole way. The whole way.
And never not done yet.
Thank you, everybody.
So long.